Good evening, everyone. City Council is still in closed session, so if you want to raise your hand for public comment, you're welcome to do so now or submit a speaker slip. Speaker slip is right here next to the door along with our agenda, and our agenda could be found online as well. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. City Council is still in closed session, so we'll get started when they are in the room. So I just want to let people know here, if you want to speak on any items on or not on the agenda, please remember to fill out the speaker slip. It's right next to the door with the agenda. And if you're joining us online, please go ahead and raise your hand for public comment. And thank you very much.
Okay, Gina, you ready? Okay, welcome to November 12th, 2024 Millbrae City Council meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:28 p.m. City Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Councilmember Nguyen,
Present.
Councilmember Riley, Councilmember Snyder,
Present.
Vice Mayor Pappen,
Here.
Mayor Fung.
Here.
All members, City Council are present.
Thank you so much. For those who are able, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, well. Thank you all. And today we start by the ceremonial presentation from the Millbrae Library Annual Report presentation. And we have Jess Lum joining us today from the Millbrae Library Manager. Thank you so much for joining us, Jess.
Good evening. Can anyone hear me? Perfect. Awesome. So good evening, Mayor Fung, City Council members, and City staff. My name is Jess Koshi Lum. I am the Millbrae Library Manager. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. I am really pleased and honored to share the library's annual report for 2023 to 2024. Next slide, please. San Mateo County Libraries is really proud to offer services that ignite growth and strengthen our community. Next slide, please. First established as a county-free library in 1912, the Library Joint Powers Authority was formed in 1999. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the JPA. Our service area covers 351 square miles and is made up of our 11 member cities and the unincorporated areas of the county. Each of our 13 libraries is a part of a larger family, offering worlds of discovery. Through innovative outreach and mobile services, enriching experiences are also delivered beyond library facilities. Next slide, please. Our communities comprise a rich diversity of individuals that our services and collections embrace and support. Our talented and staff and wonderful volunteers create a welcoming atmosphere that inspires community and includes all. Next slide, please. San Mateo County Library's programs and collections are highly used. Some exciting statistics you see displayed here include 1.7 million library visitors, up 16% from the last fiscal year, 2.4 million items circulated, a slight increase by 4%, and over 10,300 events. That's 36% more programs and events than we offered last year. Next slide, please. This year, our website visits increased by an impressive 51%, and our Wi-Fi usage was up by 14%. Our laptops and hotspots are also continue to be heavily used and well-appreciated items by our community, with both increasing by 40%. Next slide, please. At the local level, the Millbrae Library had over 225,000 library visitors and circulated 400,000 items last fiscal year. Next slide, please. This past fiscal year, we also saw 50,000 digital downloads of e-resources, e-books, e-audiobooks, etc. In addition to hosting many fun programs on site, our library champions are always heading out into our communities to engage with people at outreach events. Our program attendance at our libraries reached over 22,000 members of our community. Next slide, please. Libraries uplift their communities, and in turn, our communities work to uplift their libraries. Let me take you through some of our standout accomplishments from last year. Next slide, please. This year, we began a robust process to update our strategic plan. So we worked with local consultants, held interviews, surveyed thousands of community members and key stakeholders online and in person at our libraries and throughout the county. Our staff also visited schools, laundromats, grocery stores, and housing events to engage the community in meaningful discussions. These insights will help shape our new strategic plan, and it will help guide us meeting community needs in more effective and efficient ways. We are very proud to say that members surveyed gave San Mateo County Libraries a 98% favorability rating. Next slide, please. Our wide range of tech services and wellness-centered programs, including computer access, weekly tech help, yoga and music programs, have become a favorite among our seniors. Our libraries offer older adults the simple solace of a routine and provide a place for meaningful social interactions, helping to prevent loneliness and enrich daily life. Next slide, please. We're also really proud to host many online and in-person English language programs to support learners. With English classes, conversation clubs, book clubs, and more, our libraries have reached thousands of determined community members seeking to improve or learn English language. We are also grateful for our volunteers who drive these programs in collaboration with our staff. Next slide, please. This year, we opened a 24/7 library outpost at our Pacifica Sanchez Library. A first of its kind for our library system, this innovative service approach increases access to library materials. Featuring a lending machine with a curated collection of hundreds of books and media, the new library offering allows community members to browse, check out items, pick up holds, and return materials 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Plans are also underway for additional library outposts to be installed throughout our service areas. Next slide, please. Our libraries stay bustling with frequent and creative and fun offerings for community members to learn, experiment, and play. We started 2024 off by hosting workshops in Adobe Acrobat, Illustrator, Lightroom, Photoshop, and more. Gem painting, a relaxing activity that merges process-based art with mental wellness, debuted as a very popular adult maker program this year. Karaoke machines and board games for checkout also continue to thrill and delight our communities with endless entertainment. And the imaginative Maker-mobile, Ever on the Move, saw another successful year of taking tech to the streets. Next slide, please. When serious storms bring the unexpected, our libraries are destinations for support. We provide a place to recharge, access the internet, and reach much-needed resources. This year, we served as community resource centers following severe rain, winds, and power outages. In partnership with our member cities, the County Department of Emergency Services, Red Cross, and PG&E, we extended our evening hours. Our libraries offered a safe and reliable place for people to stay warm, access snacks and water, charge devices, and gather themselves to regroup during the storms. Next slide, please. Our impressive library champions shined really bright this year. They took advantage of every opportunity to better our community libraries and providing exceptional customer service to our patrons. We're really proud that 32% of our staff speak another language, including Spanish, Cantonese, Mandarin, Tagalog, Hindi, and Tongan. Our volunteers, friends of the libraries groups, and foundation give us critical support throughout the year. 500 volunteers contributed over 25,000 hours to our success. Next slide, please. Recently and locally, in April 2024, thanks to the support of the City of Millbrae and the Friends of the Millbrae Library, we opened our state-of-the-art makerspace, a technology and fabrication lab for all to enjoy. It was a fun event. We celebrated with over 1,000 visitors. We look forward to seeing you at the makerspace soon. Next slide, please. So thank you again for giving me the chance to share more about some of the most exciting parts about our job and our accomplishments. We appreciate the strong support and partnership with our city. Thank you so much for working with us through another successful year. I'd like to now close the presentation with a short video where we get to hear directly from our community members.
I love the San Mateo County Library System because of the vast variety of programs and services that are offered, things that you'd never expect the library to offer. I love the library.
I love the library because it is a way for me to stay connected to my mom and dad who are deceased. My parents were both always avid readers and patrons of their local libraries. They raised my sisters and I to love reading and to respect and appreciate the services that a library provides to the community. This is one of the many special ways I like to stay connected with them. So thank you.
I really appreciate that you have a safe, warm place that I can just sit and read when I want to, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
I love the library because I find that I'm able to access books in such a special way, and I can find pretty much whatever book I want. And I always find something off my list that I want to read. I love the experience of reading books that have had a life well before me.
I like the library because you can use a makerspace to make 3D printing. You can use a glow forge, and then you can do other things. I like that the staff is very kind and very helpful, so patient.
I love my library because they have wonderful bilingual resources, and I love the arts and crafts workshop.
I love my library because the staff are so friendly and helpful, and it's so pleasant to have people who want to help you find the books that you need or the ones that your children are interested in. So I'm so grateful for them. Lots of love.
We have the best library of any county in the United States. I love the San Mateo County Library System.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please. So I just want to say thank you so much to city staff and council for your partnership with us and supporting the library. Special thanks to Hannah Moran for your work on the Library JPA Operations Committee, our friends of the library for their steadfast support and advocacy, our library staff for their dedication and passionate work. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jazz. Thank you for joining us this evening, and then to just give us an update on what the library can do and has done for all of us, and particularly thankful that the multilingual assistance and the services that you provide to, as you well know, City Millbrae has a sizable ethnic community, and being able to provide those services. And also, early this year, you guys ran a citizenship class, if I'm not mistaken, and then you also provided that service in more than one language, which, frankly, for those immigrants, they may not necessarily speak English at home. You created a program tailored specifically for those who needed that service and set them up for success, which I appreciate very much. And also, I believe the Leos has been meeting in your library at the A and B room as well. And just, and also I will say my kids also has been a beneficiary of the library system because every weekend they come in and read. And some of the seniors are able to meet with the Youth Advisory Committee for the technology program. So all the things that you enable folks to come together, be able to extend their learning in the makerspace and making a lot of these artistry and creation to come to fruition. Thank you so much for all you do and continue to enable our youth, our artists, and their creativities. And so thank you so much for everything that you do. Anyone on the council? Vice Mayor?
This is just a proud jewel within our community. Thank you so very, very much. And if you don't have your library card, get it. But have they thought about, first and foremost, an outpost at, say, a train station?
Oh, that's a great idea.
We happen to have one here,
Like a mobile library bus or something?
No,
Yeah.
it's an outpost. It's a machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, we'd probably like to aid in that if we could. And
idea.
then, too, I would like to remind the public here, they have a most amazing scanner. And you can scan photos, old family photos, and put them on a disc and share them with other family members. Make sure they're all legal photos, please, nothing else. But, we all have those old photos lying around. And the scanner at the library is really top-notch. So that's another resource among the many, many resources you have. And I don't think you touched on, too, there's all kinds of different public events. I think there was a band recently with some TV reporter playing or something.
We did. So we did have one of our news reporters, the name escapes me right now.
Me too, sorry, I saw the announcement.
He did have a great show last Friday. He played an Americana set, very cool. He had all the seniors they were in love with him. So it was very sweet to see.
Well, these are the events that really bring community together. And I applaud you, and hopefully we'll have many, many more, all the hard work that's done at our library. And really the benefit to the Millbrae Library are the extended hours that we have. Because you have big libraries like San Mateo, but they can't keep them open as long because it takes a lot more staffing. So we are so lucky. At one point in time, I think Millbrae Library was used more than any other library in the whole region. So we are very, very proud, and we thank the taxpayers for that bond we all been paying for. So thank you so much for all the wonderful work you do, and visit your local library. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilwoman Ann Schneider.
Thank you. And I have an elder at home, and she uses the books. Everybody is fantastic. All the librarians are fantastic. One comment that I do hear from some of the old timers, and a little bit from me too, we've had quite a bit of turnover of staffing. And sometimes, we used to have them for a long time, like Kaj and Darren. And I know Darren went up to San Francisco, but I never heard where Kaj went. But also know that, it'd be nice that we celebrate them when any librarian moves to another place on that missed out. I reached out to Darren because he was he'd been with us for so long. But I think it would be helpful if we didn't quite have the turnover that we've had the last couple of years. And maybe it's COVID on that. And then my last question, city manager, I have 1.5 more council meetings after now. And we had talked about doing a project with the Library of Congress. And it was to celebrate for women's right to vote in a federal election. And that was in Ruben was mayor. 2020, we'd gone into lockdown. I believe 2025 is when African Americans got the right to vote, women. And then I think Asian women came after that. I will be gone, but we were going to try to make the area around the library more of a public gathering place, but also celebrate our shared history on that. So if we can get that somehow back. Library of Congress had these big things that we had it all planned out. Then Mayor Rubin Mayor Holliber and I, and then COVID hit. And we could never do that, and we were going to do that plaque to celebrate all of the different peoples and how long it took some people to get the right to vote in America. And I'd still love to see that come back. 2025, 26, time moves. But again, thank you so much, and from my mom, she loves you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jess. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councilmember Riley.
Hey, Jessie, I want to say thank you. I use library Monday to Thursday to study, still do that. And one day I lost my glass and I found out the next day for lost and I found. Thank you. I love library. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Councilmember Bob Nguyen.
Yeah, I'm a frequent user of your library. I'm a selfish request, but I did notice that the technical books, because me being an engineer, it's a little light. I'm sure if that's something you guys can consider, but that would be greatly appreciated. We had more engineering books.
We can definitely look into that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jess. And we'd love to have you come back on a regular basis to give us more update on how well the library is serving our community. Thank you so very much for all your dedication and work.
Thank you so much.
All right. Next up, we have Millbrae and Burlingame One Shoreline Resilience Project Update. And today, joining us, we have our most beloved, Sam Batista.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. Tonight we have Mr. Lynn Matterman, CEO of One Shoreline, and he'll be providing an update regarding the Millbrae Burlingame Shoreline Resilience Project. With him tonight is Chuck Anderson of Shoffin Wheeler, who will also answer any of your questions. Mr. Matterman will present the background, progress, and next steps of this resiliency project. So with that, I will turn the podium over to Mr. Matterman.
Mr. Matterman, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Mayor Fung and council members. It's good to be here again. And so I have the pleasure, along, as Sam mentioned, with our design engineer, Chuck Anderson, who can answer questions. Okay. And you're right, I do need to speak exactly into this microphone to be heard, so thanks for that tip. All right, so our agenda tonight, introduction to One Shoreline, a really quick introduction, and we'll talk about the project area, needs, objectives, and constraints, and the progress to date, and look at the draft alternatives, and then are the criteria we're using to evaluate the alternatives, and finally the next steps. All right, so One Shoreline is a special district. We were created by state legislation in 2019, and we opened our doors January 1, 2020. Do county-wide work throughout San Mateo County on all the water-related impacts of climate change. So that we were born out of many studies that were done by the county and Caltrans and Stanford, UC Berkeley, other institutions, Scripps institutions that looked at various climate change issues and found that San Mateo County is the most vulnerable county in the state to this issue. So One Shoreline has a Bay program, and the objective of the Bay program is to align all the different efforts on the 53 miles of our county shoreline between San Francisco and Palo Alto. Today we'll focus in on this area around San Francisco Airport. Of course, Millbrae is right in the middle of that circle. So the big picture around San Francisco Airport is that there were creeks that were rerouted when the airport was developed. That, along with the fact that this is such a low-lying area, has contributed to flooding issues in the whole area that you see in the image. Just north of the airport, this is imaged during a king tide over on Colma Creek, almost where it enters the bay. And in San Bruno, in the area called Bel Air, There's quite a bit of flooding on sunny days, but certainly during our atmospheric rivers that we've seen. There's pictures from 2021. And in the city of Millbrae in Landing Lane, this is an image also during an atmospheric river. And as you all know, Landing Lane is subject to flooding. And then farther down to the southeast, this is an image on the Burlingame shoreline during a high tide. And so there are a lot of issues here that we're trying to address, not just the sea level in the San Francisco Bay, but also what happens to water as it comes down the creeks. San Francisco has a planned project called the Shoreline Protection Program around its perimeter. And our job is on the north side in San Bruno and South San Francisco, and in the south side in Millbrae and Burlingame to leverage the fact that San Francisco Airport has this project and tie into it as best we can in order to provide protection and enhancement for the shoreline around the airport. So there are multiple creeks in this area to the southeast of the airport, and they include Highline Canal and El Portal Creek that are within the city of Millbrae and on the border between Millbrae and Burlingame, as well as Mills Creek, Easton Creek in Burlingame, Anza Lagoon, and Burlingame Lagoon. The challenge with this project is not just keeping Bay out of the urbanized areas of the two cities, but also ensuring that water can come down the creeks during the storms that we see efficiently and into the bay, and also that with higher bay water levels, it doesn't go up the creeks and cause flooding. So we have a big challenge, and it's not just related to the shoreline. The current FEMA 100-year floodplain looks like this in the two cities. The area in blue that's shaded, this is an area that if a property owner has a mortgage, many of them are required to pay flood insurance. We're looking at that plus the sea level rise, which is additive to the area in yellow that you see in the image here. And it extends beyond the current FEMA floodplain, of course. And then the city of Millbrae did a study that was completed in the spring of 2020 that looked at the sea level rise issues associated with Millbrae. It estimated that the properties impacted in this area are $380 million. This was back in 2020. The city of Burlingame also did a similar study, and that was completed at the end of 2019. And this project that we're talking about today was really born out of those two studies and a desire to work together with the neighbors in a kind of coordinated, collective way. We additionally are looking at One Shoreline and shallow groundwater rise, which is a major issue that's being understood, that the understanding of which is improved, and a lot of people around the Bay, technical experts, are looking at groundwater rise issue. We're trying as best we can to figure out how we can incorporate that into this project. Okay, so the overall project goal is a long-term climate resilience for both for sea level rise and extreme storms, as I mentioned, for developed natural and public access areas. So that what that looks like is coastal flood protection, providing a functioning habitat, and improving and filling gaps in the public access and trails. There's more information about this project at oneshoreline.org/MBSRP, which stands for Millbrae Burlingame Shoreline Resilience Project. So the project needs, objectives, and constraints. This image, or this slide, will focus on the constraints. The area is heavily urbanized. It includes 6 creeks and/or lagoons, as I mentioned. Our objective is FEMA accreditation to remove properties from the FEMA flood zone. And we have also the limitation of not attracting flying birds because of its proximity to the airport. So there's a tension between creating new habitat and not attracting birds that's proving challenging. Here are some images that show some of those constraints. You have an image of a building right next to the bay shoreline, and unless that building is moved or replaced, which may be the case, then just putting up a higher wall this close to the building is impractical, especially if the building is a restaurant. You think about it, and they have windows that people enjoy the bay view, so that's a challenge. And then as we go up the creeks, you see these two other images where there's development, in some cases very close to the water, in some cases it's set back farther, and certainly the development that's right along the water's edge reduces our opportunity to provide resilience without going into the water. The progress of the project to date, we started this project in March of 2022 when we hired a consultant team. I'll say that the funding for this project, One Shoreline has committed $4 million to the development of designs and the completion of a draft EIR on the project. So we hired a consultant team in March of 2022, and that team worked in 2022 and 2023 on basically filling gaps in a lot of technical data that's needed to develop the project. In October of 2023, we came out with what's called a notice of preparation, which is basically a public notice to say that we're intend to develop an environmental impact report. That notice had two fundamental alternatives, a shoreline alternative and an offshore alternative. And I'll talk about some of the comments that we received to that notice. We spent time reviewing those comments in 2023, late 2023 and early 2024. We've been developing new alternatives based on those comments and working with environmental regulatory agencies in that process. Right now, we're in the process of public engagement. So earlier today, we did a shoreline tour with some folks from Burlingame. We have a Millbrae community meeting coming up. We also have a Burlingame community meeting. In addition to this city council presentation, we're doing a city council presentation next week in Burlingame. So it's a very intensive period for public outreach, and that will continue. And our goal is to analyze and establish what's the LEDPA, which stands for Least Environmentally Damaging Practical Alternative, and it's a federal requirement that you establish that for a project before you can get a federal permit. And we would begin the EIR next year. So we put out this notice of preparation. We had a lot of comments, and I'll go through kind of very quickly some of those comments. They were mostly in regards to going offshore, not the onshore option. The comments included concerns about water quality impacts, concerns about habitat impacts, concerns about attracting wildlife, as I mentioned about flying birds, concerns about that if we were to extend the lagoon to Coyote Point, which was a consideration, that we would cut off some of the access to the shoreline for the windsurfing community. And there was a concern specific to Millbrae understandably about the impacts on views and habitat from Bayfront Park. So how we responded to those comments, we don't have a plan at this point to carry forward a large offshore lagoon alternative, and I'll talk about the new alternatives shortly. The early modeling indicates that a smaller footprint has benefits. We still need a place for that creek water to go, as you'll see, but there are benefits of a smaller footprint to that. And we're still trying to incorporate the issue of not attracting birds, and we're no longer including the option to go to Coyote Point. The city of San Mateo is working on the stretch south of Burlingame. And then in regards to Millbrae Shoreline, the two alternatives were developed to have two of the three alternatives we believe have little visual impact and enhance access. We'll talk about that. All right, so our vision of the shoreline looks more like this than what is currently on the shoreline in several areas in the city of Burlingame. To do that, or one of the benefits of having an image like the upper left for our shoreline is that a gradually sloping so-called living shoreline, talk about that, has two key benefits, that the elevations can be lower when you have a gradual slope, and it's a less abrupt transition from land to bay for both people and wildlife. So the differences between the three alternatives are really focused in the area between Highline Canal and Easton Creek. And so we'll focus on that area, but I'll talk about everything. So the updated draft alternatives are fundamentally to remain on the shoreline, to build along the shoreline an elevated park that underneath it has tunnels to move water between creeks, and then to create a near-shore waterway. And we're looking at each of these through the lens of flood protection, habitat functionality, and access. The end game here is moving water out of the creeks into the bay safely, and I'll go through these alternatives. Okay, so alternative A is working on the shoreline, and it has pump stations and tide gates. Well, first I'll say it ties into the San Francisco Airport project in the upper left. Reach 15 is their term for that segment of their project. Our project, in all cases, would tie into their project. So it ties in the upper left, and then at the bottom right, it ties into the city of San Mateo at the end of southeast corner of Burlingame. Okay, so what you'll see now are the two orange boxes that come up, and these would be new pump stations with tide gates at the end of Highline Canal. Basically, the tide gates would keep water that's with rising water from the bay out of the canals, and then you would have to pump the water from the creeks into the bay over those tide gates. So that would be a feature of this alternative A, and it would raise and improve Bayfront Park to keep the higher bay water levels out. That pink line refers to the Bay Trail, which it currently exists at Bayfront Park, and it would be widened and improved throughout. We would have in the Burlingame segment a gradual slope for so-called living shoreline, which has features that would attract wildlife and develop things like oyster beds or offshore reefs that have been constructed in other parts of San Francisco Bay. Then we would have a levee slope in the Burlingame segment that's gradual, a 10-to-1 slope, and you see the image in the bottom left of what that might look like. And finally, in Burlingame, farther to the southeast, we would have a new park and flatten the slope near the Facebook buildings near San Mateo. Okay, so that's alternative A. A specific look at alternative A in Millbrae is, again, the new pump stations at Highline Canal and El Portal. They would be designed using the existing tide gates, and the Bay Trail would follow a similar alignment and be improved, as I mentioned. In terms of public access, alternative A would improve Bayfront Park and minimize impacts to the public's experience along the bay in Millbrae. And you see an image here, a cross-section where it says raise and improve Bayfront Park. That's kind of what, at a high level, this would look like. Okay, alternative B is different. And the main difference is we're trying to reduce the number of pump stations, which are very expensive to build. They have environmental impacts, and they ultimately have a perpetual use of energy, which would be great to avoid. And so then the question is, okay, if we don't have pump stations at these creek channels, then how do we move water into the bay safely? So we still, in alternative B, raise and improve and extend Bayfront Park. And we build a tunnel under the linear park. I'll show a little bit of what that looks like. We still have the gradual living shoreline and then the other elements that we had before in Burlingame. So here we have an image of the elevated Bayfront Park with these three culverts underneath it in the Burlingame section. I'll talk about the Millbrae section in just a second. And it's kind of analogous to what was built recently at the Presidio in San Francisco. Instead of moving cars underneath a new elevated park, we would be moving water. So the Bay, in terms of the Bay Trail, the tunnel underneath the linear park would move the water centrally to Mills Creek from Highline Canal, El Portal Creek, and Easton Creek. And then the water would be pumped out at Mills Creek. So we'd basically be taking out 3 pump stations and having 1 instead of 4. Okay. So the alternative B, focused in on Millbrae, would have the new structures to divert water from Highline Canal and El Portal Creek. As was mentioned, we would be diverting that towards Burlingame and down to Mills Creek. The Bay Trail would follow the similar alignment. It would be improved and coordinated with MTC's Bay Trail program, as mentioned. And the image in the right side is the enlarged image of the culverts underneath the elevated Bayfront Park on the Millbrae Shoreline. In terms of public access, Alternative B improves Bayfront Park and minimizes impacts. It's the same as for Alternative A. Okay, Alternative C is different. It's also a way to move water between the canals, and I'll go through this now. So it's tied into San Francisco Airport at a slightly different location. It includes a seawall that would contain the water from Highline Canal and El Portal Creek, and then a nearshore levee in Burlingame to Easton Creek, where there's more space, and we would invite people to walk, unlike the problem with having people walk right up to the San Francisco Airport runway. The nearshore waterway would look like this. So you basically have a levee offshore, and then the waterway between the levee and the shoreline to move water between the creeks into a centralized pump station. That centralized pump station, instead of Mills, would be at Easton Creek. And basically you'd have the Bay Trail on top of the new levee, and the Bay Trail and Bayfront Park in Millbrae would connect into this offshore levee, Bay Trail. One of the benefits of this is that there's fish passage between Highline Canal and El Portal Creek. It doesn't currently exist, and it would be restored, and the fish passage would go from those creeks to the offshore waterway and then out to the bay adjacent to Mills Creek. Alternative C focused in on Millbrae. The nearshore waterway is for creeks for storage and creek drainage is shown there in the upper left. There's a pedestrian bridge, as I mentioned, from Bayfront Park to the offshore levee and the fish passage. In terms of public access, Alternative C impacts views from Bayfront Park, but also removes existing tide gates and allows for improved drainage from the creeks and restored fish passage. Then there's an image on the right of kind of a cross-section of the seawall matching San Francisco Airport's project at that location. Now, it is possible to mix and match these different alternatives. So what you see in the left side of the screen is alternatives A and B, where it has the Bayfront Park off Millbrae, on the Millbrae shoreline, basically an elevated Bayfront Park with a new trail, and it has pump station at El Portal Creek. But then you could combine that with alternative B, which would be the tunnel concept from El Portal Creek down to Easton Creek. Or on the right side of the image, you have alternative B, which has the tunnel under Bayfront Park along the Millbrae shoreline, and that could be combined with an offshore waterway. So there are opportunities to take advantage of what we like about these alternatives in different segments of the project. So to select a preferred alternative, we have a criteria, and this is a criteria that has been developed recently, and it will be used as part of the public outreach, but also as when we hear feedback, but also as we're talking with regulatory agencies and we get closer to develop the beginning of a draft EIR process. The criteria include flood protection. I won't read all the words on the slide, but happy to talk about it. The criteria include flood protection, habitat, public access and recreation. Also, what does implementation look like in terms of the activities involved and the cost? What is operations and maintenance of this new major infrastructure? And then the concern about the bird strikes. The next steps, here's a list of the various public meetings going on between October 28th, when the One Shoreline Board had a similar presentation, and early December, where there's an online community meeting planned, a webinar. Here we are on November 12th with the City of Millbrae City Council, and then you see on the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th additional meetings, including a community workshop in Millbrae on November 19th. The next steps, here we are for the public engagement, as I mentioned. And then in the first quarter of next year, we intend to analyze the feedback that we've received, refine the alternatives, work with the environmental permitting agencies, which include both state and federal agencies, to establish what is a permittable project, and then a second round of outreach and engagement after that process, and then finally begin the EIR in the summer of 2025. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Mr. Matterman. Anyone on this council? Councilmember Nguyen, and then followed by Councilmember Ann Schneider.
I'm not sure if this is covered in the EIR. If it is, then maybe I can look at that later, but are you doing this in coordination with like regionally, with other, like, we're not just talking about like this peninsula, but East Bay, San Francisco. I'm just curious if that's the case or if it's done in isolation.
Well, the requirements that are coming out regionally associated with shoreline adaptation plans, this is a BCDC requirement that's coming out. BCDC is the Bay Conservation Development Commission. And so there's requirements coming down about what the objectives for shoreline adaptation should look like. And we're working with BCDC on those requirements that they're putting out. And those are also informing our project. So it's done regionally in the sense that we're working on what the regional outlook is on what the objectives should be for shoreline resilience, and so that's on the protection side. So what amount of sea level rise, what kind of a storm do we assume, things like that. On the recreation side, this project certainly complies with the standards associated with the region-wide Bay Trail program. And most of the areas of our Bay Trail, even if it's classified as Bay Trail, don't meet those standards currently. And then there are significant gaps or portions of the Bay Trail that are hard to push a stroller on because they're just in really bad shape. So on the recreation side, we're certainly intend to meet the standards that are out there regionally. And then on the habitat side, there's a lot of discussion about habitat goals for the Bay. Those are ongoing. Those have been going on for a long time. And the permitting agencies like California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Regional Water Quality Control Board, and BCDC, not to mention the federal agencies, all work to kind of ensure that that we're meeting our habitat goals. So I would say yes, there's a lot of involvement with regionalism in this project. It's not just a standalone that's viewed kind of outside everything else that's going on in the Bay. But at the end of the day, it's important that we move forward along our county shoreline. There are other counties that their shorelines are not moving along as quickly, and that's concerning, and partly or mostly because of our substantial exposure that we have in San Mateo County.
So just a quick follow-up. You mentioned assumptions earlier. Like, what are the key assumptions on climate change and sea level rise that you guys are building into your plans?
Yeah, so we have there are really a couple ways to slice sea level rise. And the state puts out guidance that they call guidance on how to think about sea level rise for local jurisdictions that do planning. And that guidance is based on basically a cross-section of global emission scenarios on the one hand of a table, you could say, and local risk tolerance on the other side. And that's just too out there and imprecise for us. And so we need to pick a number and run with it. The number that's been chosen in other parts of San Mateo County and actually built in projects or in other projects that are in design is the current FEMA 100-year elevation of water in the bay plus 6 feet. And so when you think about it, in order to get out of the FEMA flood zone, they have something called freeboard. You need to add a couple feet to the current FEMA 100-year elevation. So if you take the current FEMA 100-year elevation, you add the freeboard, then it's 4 feet of sea level rise. Another way to look at this, completely separate of the FEMA number, is just related to sea level rise. And it's approximately, our objective is approximately equal to about 3.5 feet of sea level rise. So there's a lot more that could be described about that, but I would just say to you that it's in the range of the extreme events we see today, plus about 6 feet, and that would include waves and things like that. And then in terms of storms, that's important too, because we see a lot of flooding now with these storms, as we showed in some of these images. And in terms of storms, we have actually a consultant that's looking at what is the future climate-driven 100-year event look like? Because all of the FEMA numbers that are out there and the designs of our storm drain systems and previous projects are all based on historical data, and that doesn't work in our drought and deluge cycle that we're seeing nowadays. So we're taking a new look at storms.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for adding some additional alternatives. Could we go to the slide where you've got alternate A, B, and C, D on that? And I'm going to give you some background because we have new council members and we have a new council member in the audience. San Francisco sea level rise plan includes the filling of 5 acres of mudflats by Millbrae. Exactly where wasn't completely clear in their EIR. So the plan that you're showing for Millbrae does not, no, it's the, I'm sorry, I can't talk and look at the same time. The plans right now look as if San Francisco hasn't made any changes, but the change for Reach 15 is to add a 5-foot thick, 9-foot tall wall on that, and it's going to come out into the mudflat. So the area that you're showing for Millbrae will not be Millbrae if SFO gets what it wants. Now, we were both up at the event, at the estuary event up in San Francisco a couple of months ago, and I talked to the executive director and the president of the board of BCDC, and they said, well, just because SFO has made their plans, that doesn't mean that's what they're going to get permitted with, which to me means we don't know what SFO is going to get away with on that. So it's very hard to look at Reach. This is one of the ones, but you had the other one where it had A, B, and B, C. That was a good one on that. It kind of showed how to mix these alternatives. But we're looking at Reach, whatever the Millbrae Reach is, we really don't know what SFO may or may not do here. And just again, for our new council members, it amazes me that San Francisco does not get its permits through San Mateo County or through Millbrae. They get it through the San Francisco Planning Commission. And they actually don't even have to go to their own Board of Supervisors. And that's something we have to be a lookout for. So unlike anywhere else in the county, either side, ocean or bayside, we have this extra hoop to have to go through. So it needs to be first and foremost. And then Len, I'm going to tell you, because I think you mentioned it at a board meeting and it was probably just, thinking about it. SFO is going to if they fill in 20 acres of bay, that's a lot of mitigation money. Your comment was, oh great, we'll take that money and spend it down in Menlo Park. No, that mitigation money should stay in Millbrae and or San Bruno. We are the ones most impacted. We are the ones that lost our creeks. We lost our access to the bay, which then takes me back to this slide, looking at A, and I hope come the 19th that you shift the slide a little bit more and show Lomita Canal, which is Lomita Creek, which is the creek that cannot flood. And for the new people, SFO's attitude is Millbrae, really Millbrae, San Bruno, you don't do anything. We're going to do our own Reach 16, which runs on the west side of 101. And that means all of that water that falls will flood back into Millbrae or San Bruno. And Sam, I was amazed. We're working on the new engineering for our pump station. And I was amazed to find out that even though the problem is caused by SFO, we pay for that pump station, and that has to change. This is a problem that SFO and 101 created. It should not be on the city of Millbrae to have to pay for that. And that then goes back to if SFO has to mitigate, that money should be staying right back here to mitigate those problems. You had a couple of other things. Shorebirds. SFO, if you don't know, has an amazing redwood forest with plenty of birds in it. They simply don't want Millbrae to have trees and birds. But there's a Cornell study, and there are a couple of other studies, Cornell, of course, great bird school, that says which birds are actually dangerous and which are not. And I hope that in our studies we are including which of those birds are, because we already have a bird population there, and it is my understanding that it's not gulls, it's not pigeons. Those are the main two that are bad. And frankly, SFO, if you're worried, then move your airport. You know, at this point, for 100 years, we have done what SFO has said, and right now we do what's best for Millbrae. Couple more. I loved the living slope for Burlingame. I noticed Millbrae doesn't have that. Is that because of the birds and because of pushback from SFO?
Ask Chuck Anderson to reply.
Okay.
Good evening. The main reason it's not in Millbrae is because Bayfront Park is already a living shoreline.
But we could enhance it. We could take it farther out instead of the silvery mud flats.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so you see it in Burlingame because that would be
What I see is a lot of money spent in Burlingame and minimal to Millbrae. That's what I see on this. So I see that they'll have some access to the bay, which we are not allowed to have access to the bay. We can't touch the water. So if there's a way to fix that, as a kayaker, as a former windsurfer who windsurfs here, we can't do that. So I'd love to see when you come next week to Millbrae that we talk about our people not having to go to Burlingame to touch the water, to play on the water, to use the bay that is our right, that we have it from Millbrae. And I appreciate that little bridge that's in one of the drawings that wasn't in the other. Now, the other thing that the Bay Trail, I know some people think that the Bay Trail is going to be on McDonald Road, but we are trying to get it over a separated bike pedestrian overpass, 101, to get it off of the 101 overpass at Millbrae Avenue because it's so dangerous, and then connect into our completed finish of the Bay Trail, which runs along Aviador, and then somehow connect. There's several different plans right now, and MTC is currently working on that. So that's another living project.
Oh, yeah.
But you keep having it go to McDonald Road, and I don't think that's viable on there.
And these are very conceptual, so we can.
But these are the other
certainly-
plans that are happening right now in the real time, with MTC currently working on that right now for the I hate that it's the FSFO. It should be the Millbrae San Bruno. We actually have some grant applications for, Sam, is it conceptual plans or engineering if we get those grants from SMTA planning? So we're moving closer to that. I told you Bay Trail birds. We really need, and we've been talking about this for years. We flood because SFO didn't maintain Lamita Canal, but there is opportunity for retention ponds to capture stormwater that could help with the shallow groundwater on there. I don't see any of that because you're kind of looking at us right from the corner of the airport and not the fact that 60% of Millbrae drains through Highline Canal and Lamita Canal. So, I mean, any plan this project does could impact our ability to fund the work that we have to do on Lamita Canal and those other neighborhoods. They cannot be separated. I know they don't touch the bay, but that's SFO's fault, not ours. So they need to be incorporated in there. And there's real opportunity there if we do a habitat conservation plan that we can monetize the operation. We can begin to collect money from other projects that need to spend mitigation money, and we can actually improve the habitat for our endangered species and provide access to nature for the people of Millbrae. This plan ignores that. It just says, oh, at Highline Canal, we'll do something there. It has to go a little farther upstream. And I'm sure I'll have more come next Tuesday? So thank you for bringing that here on that. And is the workshop that you're having at Burlingame on Saturday, is that going to be on Zoom? If you could let me know.
Get closer to the mic, please. Len?
We'll let you know.
Perfect answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Hey, Len. Well, some exciting alternatives here. Some of those, like A and B, I mean, it seemed like we would have access to the shoreline.
So access to the shoreline would only be improved by any of the alternatives.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it seemed like here. So, yeah, just interesting. One shoreline is a great concept that we all, everybody coming together here. Disturbing to hear, hopefully there is more communication with SFO as far as everything goes, because water has no boundaries. So we either work together or everybody's going to get water somehow here. There's a lot of work to be done. I'll just say, I hope we can, find some resolution here that really doesn't destroy the waterfront. And I think you've presented several of them here that are workable. I think the term 100-year flood seems to be every 10 years or something instead of 100 years. So excited to see where we can go with all this. And I know a ton of planning has gone into this, and I know you guys are on top of this. It'd be really exciting if new technology comes into play in any of this. You mentioned the San Francisco overpass thing. That was billions of donated dollars, I think, from Salesforce. I don't think we have that in our back pocket, but again, I think this is very interesting and something that's absolutely necessary. If it was put into play, one of these, would our residents on that side be out of a flood zone, or could they benefit from that?
Well, they would certainly benefit from it. I mean, as the storms come through and the bay water level is rising and the storm surge, so they would certainly benefit from the project in terms of flood protection. All the properties that are in Millbrae would benefit that are between Highline and El Portal Creek, and a Highline canal that is more efficiently functioning, let's say, than it is now, would benefit areas upstream. So yes, they would benefit. In terms of getting out of the FEMA flood zone, I think an important limitation on that relates to the storm drain system, which unfortunately is not able, and this is the case in most cities, almost all cities, that it's not able to handle these larger events. And so I would say we would probably see some reduction in the FEMA flood zone, but we can't eliminate the FEMA flood zone with the project that deals with the Bay Shoreline until we can get the water to the creek channels efficiently throughout the city.
Well, it helps us when SFO does what they're supposed to do in cleaning out the canal. We've had significant results, and they still have work to do. So that kind of management really helps the city of Millbrae, because we've had terrible results when they did not clean out their portion of the canal. So thank you. Look forward to some future resolution here, and I think there's some good ideas that would really be helpful. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot two more. Vice Mayor brought it up. Shoreline, at Highline Canal, we have the Millbrae pump and the SFO pumps. On December 31st, a year and a half ago, they did not understand why they needed to turn on the pumps and actually told staff, and Tom can correct me or Sam can. We asked them, they said no, and then when the city's flooded south of us, then the next time, that next atmospheric river that hit all over New Year's, then they turned it on. We flooded in October and November on Millbrae Avenue because Burlingame, we share a pump station. Burlingame had removed the pumps and then hadn't put in anything when these rivers hit, and we flooded our brand new Millbrae Avenue on that. You're talking about this tunnel system. I am concerned that Millbrae, both for our wastewater, we share a pipe with Burlingame, but we are secondary to it. We're not the primary. So when we have to clear out wastewater in an atmospheric river when more's coming in, we couldn't move it because Burlingame had first rights. So when I hate to sound like this, but Burlingame has not always been a very good partner on that. And if you're asking to share this tunnel system, which I get the concept, who's primary, who's secondary? Because it's happened just this last year when we were trying to move sewer water out, or with the pump stations on there. It's just, you guys will come in and do a project, but then it's left to the local governments, and somebody is a senior right holder and somebody's a secondary on that. So I think those issues need to be clarified on that. Basically, one of your plans looked at removing a bunch of pump stations, which saves Burlingame money, but I guess you're directing Highline Canal down. So I don't know. I think I need to know a little bit more about the the long-term financial responsibility and the cooperation between communities, because Millbrae has lost more time than it's won. Oh, and you did a shoreline tour for Burlingame. I took your folks out on a shoreline tour of Millbrae. Are you doing a shoreline tour for Millbrae?
So there was a shoreline tour, right? Is that the one?
I took your staff and our higher office holder staff out there. We walked from the BART station so they could see the whole flooding area, the Highline Canal, and we went out and how hard it is to cross Millbrae Avenue in terms of access to the shore.
Yeah.
But we haven't done one for the people of Millbrae.
So there is a shoreline walking tour that's scheduled for November 17, I believe.
And is that Burlingame or Millbrae?
Where are we? Public shoreline walking tour. I think it's both. I think it starts in Millbrae and it goes to Burlingame.
Could we get that emailed? I've been out of country. I just got back. So you may have sent it, and I apologize if I didn't see it. But let's get that out to the public so they know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Len. Thanks for coming in and briefing our public. Okay, moving on to agenda item on a general overview and staff briefing. City Manager Tom Williams, would you please provide a City Manager update, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you, members of the City Council. Tom Williams, City Manager. The first slide, if we may, Mr. Eduardo. Here's a great picture. Yesterday, November 11th was Veterans Day. And this was the 5th year in a row that the city of Millbrae honored veterans and our local veterans here in the city of Millbrae. We had a great turnout, rain or shine, as everybody in attendance. We had quite a rain yesterday, which was great. So this picture, starting on the left, that's Courtney Ellington, our partner at One Vet, that helps us with this program. Just behind her is the San Mateo County Veteran of the Year, Mr. Bob Hoover, who spoke. Gave some really great words yesterday. Then we have next to that on the bottom left in the purple jacket, that's our ex-mayor Dan Quigg. Then of course we have ex-mayor Navy Captain Robert Gottschalk that was there. Next to him with the USA shirt, that's Paul Harrell, who was Veteran of the Year, actually San Mateo County Veteran of the Year 3 years ago. Next to him, we all know that person, that is Mayor Fung. Then we move down, that's obviously Councilmember Riley, who sang the national anthem. Thank you for doing that to honor the veterans. That was very nice. And then I think that's Vice Mayor Pappin underneath the Wells Fargo sign on the left with her hood on. and then to the right of that is Councilmember DeWin. So thank you, Council, for doing this, but also with staff, right? I'd like to recognize Eduardo Gonzalez here, who just did a fantastic job.
Correct.
Doing a lot of the heavy lifting and coordination. Of course, Craig Sintas, who's out and about. Hannah Moran, our Recreation Director, and her staff. Wayne Lee, our ex-council.
That's right.
Does a fantastic
Former
job
Mayor Wayne
setting
Lee.
up the missing soldier table.
That's right.
Really in honor of his father. So this is a great event, and I'm proud to be part of the city that celebrates and recognizes our veterans.
Well, and the gentleman in the front row there, he's 90 what? 95 years old, veteran in the front.
Yeah, 95 years old and a Millbrae resident and a veteran. He also gave some nice commentary about his brother.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt, but I just wanted to say this is the event that we do annually. It's part of our tradition, and this group grows bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And this year it's raining, and it's the biggest I've ever seen it. So it just goes to show how important this is to our community to continue to honor those, not only those who are already currently serving, but those who had served all of us in keeping our country safe. Thank you, City Manager.
Yeah, no, thank you, and to the council and the community and the volunteers. Okay, next slide, please. So this as you know, there was a delegation that just got back, I think today, from Hanyu, Japan, which is one of our sister cities, or now friendship cities. And I just wanted to share with the city council and the public what we had presented. And so the box on the top right, there's a nice red box, and in it you can barely make it out where that Millbrae emblem is. That is a stuffed animal of Millie, short for Millbrae, our red-legged frog. Now, what's great about this is Hanyu, Japan, each municipality in Japan actually has a mascot. And Hanyu, once a year, has a festival that I understand brings in more than 1 million people. And each city then competes with their mascot. So we sent our mascot over, Millie the red-legged frog, as a gift exchange between Millbrae and our friendship city, Hanyu. And then next to that is a Millbrae hat. Well, below that is a wine glass from this year's Millbrae Wine Festival. And then just a great paperweight commemorating the event and the visit of the council, which you can see in the middle. Below that, in the triangular frame, that is a gift from us to the city. That's our city flag in a nice flag display case with insignia of commemorating the date. And then to the right is an artistic, just Millbrae flame as our esteemed city clerk put together, again, to commemorate that we handed out. You can't see it in the box, and I'll be providing it, but we provided and made these great lapel pins with the city key that are becoming very popular. So that was the gift exchange, and I know Councilmember Snyder was there also, our sister cities Commissioner Kathleen Camara, and a member of the Millbrae School Board, Maggie Musa, was a delegation. Mr. Eduardo, next slide. All right, this is the demolition of One Meadow Glen. Now used to be known as 959 El Camino. This is on the corner of Meadow Glen and Broadway, the old Office Depot site. So there's a groundbreaking that is scheduled for November 20th at 11 a.m. This looks like the groundbreaking, but it isn't. This was just the demolition. So there's a groundbreaking with the developer and the city council and the community's invited. That is November 20th at 11 a.m. out at the site, corner of Meadow Glen and Broadway. So very exciting project. 278 residential units, of which 15% are affordable, plus about 17,000 square feet of retail that wraps around a public plaza on this project. So it's going to be very nice. All right, next slide. So more progress. It's a great partnership actually with the library. This is e-book stop. So on the right, you'll see a sign that we will display throughout the city in Central Park, the lobby here at City Hall, the Recreation Center, and other parks throughout the city. And basically, this is let me go to my slide here so I can read it. You can download, as you can see on the slide, it's a free service from San Mateo County Library where you can download ebooks, e-audio books on your smartphone, tablet, laptop, without a library card for 3 weeks. And so it's easy Wi-Fi access. You go on Wi-Fi, select ebook stop, and then in the browser you can open up the ebook stop from the library and just tap go and you can start reading. So books are available in English, Spanish, and Chinese. And if you have any questions, head over to the library and you can ask the great staff over there. But this is really a neat program for our community. So you'll see these signs and people can actually get download free books. So pretty neat partnership with the library. And then also the 20th anniversary celebration, Thursday, November 20th from 5 to 8 p.m. At the Millbrae Library. There's Perry End Magic Show starting at 5 o'clock. Then there's a library memory walk. There'll be local trivia contests, so start to study all your local Millbrae trivia. And then a great band, Native Elements, that's played at our Beats and Brews. They're a South San Francisco band, and they're fantastic. And then there's a Pate night with a local artist. So this is November 21st, 5 to 8 p.m. at the library. That's a whole lot to fit in for 3 hours, but it's going to be fantastic. And I think a huge crowd to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Millbrae Library. And then holidays are fast approaching. I just wanted to get this on everybody's calendar that December 7th, which is the first Saturday, is always the tree lighting And then we also have pictures with Santa and Mrs. Claus at the gazebo on Library Lane and Poplar Avenue. This is fantastic. A lot of families are coming and people are coming and they're using these photos for Christmas cards the following year. It's pet friendly, so you can bring your animals and get a great picture with Santa and Mrs. Claus. And as I mentioned, the next slide is just after that is the tree lighting starting at 5 p.m. out here in front of City Hall. Again, that's December 7th, first Saturday, always in December, the tree lighting, that begins at 5 p.m. And so we will have choirs from the local schools. I think even the Taylor Band will play this year. So hot chocolate, refreshments, tree lighting. We have our historic fire engine that will be on display, and it's always a good time. So, Mr. Mayor, that's a summary of everything that's happening in Millbrae this last week.
Okay, go ahead, real quick.
City manager and Ms. Moran, they actually in Hanyu, they have a festival, a worldwide festival of mascots. So I have some photos, not of the event, but photos of the event. They bring in hundreds and hundreds of mascots from around the world. That could be an idea for us. It was really, they love their mascots. And I've got some video of their 8 mascots.
Thank you.
And just, we have a poster back in the office that you may see and wonder what it is, and that's from Hanyu and all of the hundreds of mascots on the poster, so kind of fun.
Okay, thank you. Can I also please get a report out from the November 12, 2024 closed session, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There is no reportable action from the closed session.
Thank you so much. Next up is the approval of minutes on the special meeting minutes of August 27, 2024, and also the closed session meeting minutes of September 10, 2024. Any council comments? I entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Ann Schneider.
Aye.
Would you like the second, Councilmember Riley? Okay, thank you. So if no further comment, could we get the roll call, please?
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
Councilmember Riley.
Aye.
Councilmember Snyder.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pappen.
Yes.
Mayor Fung.
Aye.
The 2 set of minutes are passed by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you so much. Today, we don't have any oral report from city committees and commissions chair, and that takes us to public communication. And this portion of the agenda is reserved for those who wish to comment on any item not on tonight's agenda. However, a speaker must address subject matters within the jurisdiction of the city of Millbrae. And each speaker will have 3 minutes, and the speaker is to address directly to the entire council, not individual council member nor the public. I believe I have one speaker slip here. Okay, and starts with G. Awa Alaza, please. My apology if I'm not pronouncing it.
Hey, Gioff, it's all right.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a resident of District 5, where I live in an apartment complex at the corner of El Camino and Murchison. My complex provides me with a parking spot in the garage, but I've not been able to secure a second parking spot, which is necessary for my family. I'm open to parking on the streets surrounding my complex, but every single street has parking limitations that would put me at risk of a parking ticket due to our proximity to the Caltrain station. California Avenue has a limit of 4 hours between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Except Sundays and holidays. Murchison has 1 hour between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. And Irwin has 4 hours between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. As you can see, on any day I work from home, I would have to move my car multiple times a day, and every Saturday as well. And if I go on vacation, I would have to figure out somewhere to put my car. So as a resident, I would ask the council to consider implementing a resident parking permit exemption for the streets surrounding the complex, which are Irwin, California, between Irwin and Murchison, Murchison between California and Irwin, so that I can park my car on the street without worrying about getting a parking ticket. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Is there anybody else online, City Clerk?
Good evening, Mayor. We do not have any speakers online.
Thank you so much. This is obviously not an item on the agenda, but City Manager, perhaps it might be valuable in the future as we discuss parking authorities and future parking strategy to include a discussion of residential parking permits, especially for residents who are in somewhat of a higher density residential area, recognizing that parking is always a challenge for our local residents. Thank you. All right, so moving on to consent calendar. We've got item 5, 6, and 7, adoption of a resolution awarding a construction contract to Golden Bay Construction, Inc. For CML 5299, parentheses 019, Millbrae Transit Center Micromobility Hub Pilot Project in the amount of $306,222 and establishing a project contingency of $61,244 for a total project budget of $367,466 and authorizing the city manager or designee to execute a contract and all contract change orders up to the project budget. Item 6, which is the adoption of a resolution awarding a construction contract to Coeos Engineering, Inc. For 2024 Marina Vista sewer replacement and pavement rehabilitation project in the amount of $1,687,392.50, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute a task order with Park Engineering, Inc. for construction management and inspection services in the amount of $196,740 and establishing a project contingency of $282,620 for a total project budget of $2,166,752.50 and authorizing the city manager or designee to execute a contract and all contract change orders up to the total project budget. Item 7, adoption of a resolution approving the final parcel map and improvement agreement for the Alexandria Campus for Life Sciences project located at 6 Rollins Road, 20 Rollins Road, 30 Rollins Road, 231 Millbrae Avenue, 230 Harriet Tubman Way, 201 Adrian Road, and 231 Adrian Road. And does anyone want to pull any item from the consent calendar?
Yes, I'd like to pull item 7.
Okay, item 7 has been pulled. Any other item? Okay.
Move
okay.
approval of the other items.
5 and 6?
5 and 6.
Okay, all right. Any other council comment or discussion from anybody? Okay, we have a motion for approval for item 5 and 6. Do I have a second anywhere?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Nguyen. And any other further comments? Okay, City Clerk, would you please?
Councilmember Nguyen,
Aye.
Councilmember Briley,
Aye.
Councilmember Snyder,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pappen,
Yes.
Mayor Fung.
Aye.
Consent items number 5 and 6 passed by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, for item 7, City Manager, do we have any?
I just have a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
When are we going to see the monument sign? Sometime before we leave this council, I hope?
So on the monument sign, the council may recall that it was a condition of approval for Alexandria to work with the city on a design. We have met with Alexandria, and they did contract a design firm, landscape design and signage company. There are a couple of different concepts that were generated or that have been generated. Not only replacement of the monument signs at the intersection of Millbrae Avenue and Rollins Road, but also enhancement, landscape, and gateway signage further to the east at the 101 Millbrae Avenue. So we will be bringing those concepts back to the city council probably in March. I checked with our staff. So that's the timing.
So for the current council members and future council members, before these developments went in, there was a sign that let you know you were entering Millbrae. Those signs were removed. Sadly, staff was a little slow in recognizing that we do need a monument sign somewhere when you enter the city. So we added a condition onto the development agreement that somehow when you enter Millbrae, you will, like you see in most cities, it'll say Millbrae somehow, some way. So we hope that will be, we hoped to get it before we left the council, but looks like it's delayed more so. But it is important that when you enter Millbrae, you see something that notifies you, besides the fact it's Millbrae Avenue. But something that recognizes in a significant and classy, respectful way that this is Millbrae. I think you can all, if you remember, we had it on both sides of Millbrae Avenue there. And now the developments on both sides have encroached on what were the monument signs, as we refer to. So it'll be up to you, I guess, in March sometime to evaluate what is being presented. Okay, move approval of item 7.
Second.
Okay. Any other further comments from anyone? Okay, all right. Without any further discussion, no public comment? Any public comment on this item? Okay, all right. City Clerk, would you please?
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Riley?
Aye.
Councilmember Snyder?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pappen?
Yes.
Mayor Fung?
Aye.
Consent item number 7 passed by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you so much. Moving on to public hearing, which we don't have any tonight. And for existing business, on item number 8, adoption of a resolution approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a cost-sharing agreement with the town of Hillsborough for the Highline Water Pipeline Project. And we have our DPW Director, Sam Batista.
Good evening again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. Tonight before you is a cost-sharing agreement with the town of Hillsborough for the Highline Water Pipeline Project. Next slide, please. So as you know, the city buys its water from SFPUC, and the water originates from the Hetchy system, which is east of Modesto. SFPUC's goal is to restore service within 72 hours after a seismic event. However, service could possibly be not at full capacity, and SFPUC's wholesale agencies such as Millbrae, the distributions could be seismically vulnerable. And Millbrae, Hillsborough, and Burlingame systems are located at the end of this gravity system, the Hetchy water system. Next slide, please. So this is the existing conditions of the system. So as you can see from the slide, north is San Bruno. At the top of the slide is SFO. To the bottom of the slide is Highway 280. And as you can see, there's El Camino that runs in between the 101 and 280. So as you can see, there's these arrows that are listed as existing turnouts. These turnouts are how water is fed into the Millbrae system. These turnouts are located on El Camino, and then we have 2 pump stations that pump water up into the tanks and distribute water down the hills to all our residents. Between the turnouts and 280, there happens to be many fault lines, and during a seismic event, water lines will be impacted. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this project is to provide an alternate water supply connection from the Harry Tracy water treatment plant through the cities of Millbrae, Burlingame, and the town of Hillsborough. And this new pipeline will avoid fault lines where there are potential for displacement or liquefaction from earthquakes. The project will also provide 6 million gallons per day of water and protect the critical water storage and distribution infrastructure to more than 60,000 people in the area. And it will also service fire hydrants during a seismic event. It would also provide a reliable source of water within and adjacent to the wildlife urban interface, which we also call the WUI, and substantially increase fire suppression resources to reduce the potential of fires from the WUI from spreading into the 3 communities. So if there is a fire on the west side of 280 that jumps over the freeway, at least this project would be able to help put out those fires. And also, this project would eliminate dependency on the electric grid by utilizing a gravity-fed system, providing an uninterrupted water flow from the Harry Tracy plant in the higher elevations in the event water cannot be delivered from SPUC system from the lower zones. Next slide, please. So this slide shows you the proposed project alignment. The blue line is the new water line, which would be coming from the Harry Tracy plant, connect to an existing turnout, the Helen turnout. It would go down to a proposed pump station at the Helen tank, and then continue up across Skyline. So as you can see, the pipeline goes southbound, all in the city's right-of-way and right-of-ways in the other cities. And then the blue dots shown are new fire hydrants, and those hydrants are for the increased fire suppression. And it will connect all the way to the Darrell tanks down in Hillsborough. Next slide, please. So just some background information regarding the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Community, also known as the BRIC grant program. So in September of 2022, the town of Hillsborough submitted a notice of intent or a notice of interest for this project. And in October of 2022, the town of Hillsborough came here to the city of Millbrae to provide an update regarding this project. And at the time, the city council found it to be very beneficial for its residents. Our city provided a letter of support and potential interest in providing financial support to move forward with this project. In December of 2022, the California Office of Emergency Service, also known as Cal OES, determined that this project is eligible under the BRIC program, and Hillsborough submitted this application. Slide, please. The project cost for this is approximately $32 million. The grant application requested $22.3 million in federal funding with a non-federal match commitment of $9.9 million. The matching funds would come from the towns of Hillsborough, Millbrae, and Burlingame. And in August of 2023, the town of Hillsborough was notified from Cali OES that that we all received $22.3 million from the BRIC grant program, a large amount of money for this very important infrastructure project. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows how the project costs are broken down. So a total cost of approximately $2.2 million, a BRIC grant in the amount of 23.3, and the remaining $9.9 million is broken into the different municipalities' shares. So Hillsborough bears a very large part of this project at 67%, Millbrae at 19%, and Burlingame at 14%. So the way that these percentage capacities were calculated was based on the flows required for each municipality. And yes, I confirmed with Hillsborough that Hillsborough is the largest user of water per capita per BOSCA. So they have lots of large lots and lots of green grass. Next slide, please. So in May of 2024, the City Council approved this project in fiscal year 2024-2025 capital improvement program, and approved $1.8 million as Millbrae's contribution towards the project. So an additional $90,400 would come from the water fund balance, or water fund fund balance to fully finance the city's portion of the project. And there is a clause in the agreement that says in the event actual construction bids received exceed the estimated project cost by 25%, each municipality will have the opportunity to withdraw their participation in the project. Next slide, please. Regarding the cost-sharing agreement, the City Attorney's Office has reviewed this agreement and found it to be satisfactory. And just for your information, on October 21st of this year, Burlingame's City Council approved the cost-sharing agreement with the town of Hillsborough. So, next slide. And the recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a cost-sharing agreement with the town of Hillsborough for the Highline Water Pipeline Project. With that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Director Batista. Anyone from this council? Councilwoman Ann Schneider.
Thank you. And thank you, City Manager. And of course, I support this. For the public, there are 5 major fire dangers in San Mateo County. One is Yunipacera Park, which abuts Meadows neighborhood. It's considered county property, so unincorporated San Bruno. Hillsborough's one of the top, and then it's East Belmont and Half Moon Bay. So that could be one of the reasons why they're very careful. They also do have big lots and lots of stuff like that. I'm wondering, we have a totally separate issue going on with SFPUC. SFPUC isn't, I mean, they're the deliverer of water, but they're really not a part of this. Are they strongly in support of this? Where's SFPUC on this? And the reason I'm asking, if they need more laboratory space, can we use this project to say, put your lab space up at the Harry Tracy plant instead of on El Camino?
I don't think there's any relationship.
Yeah, I don't think there is, but it was
this project. Yeah.
Okay, I think we should be looking at anything where we are dealing with SFPUC. We need to start getting something in addition to what their operations in Millbrae cost us. And I won't be on council for the time when that next thing comes up. So we really need to keep an eye on the El Camino Real property and get them to put their operations up on the hill. They've got there, I've toured it. They've got the land up there. And that is where the water is. Okay, thank you. I'm fully in support.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Anyone else? Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Nguyen.
So I'm seeing cost sharing here. I don't doubt the benefit of the system, right? Like we want to be able to prevent fires where we can. Where it's not clear to me is, I get that flow rate. We have a metric to measure what our fair share is for costs. But then what about like system failures? What about maintenance of those systems, right? And then what is the burden on us long-term wise?
Yes, good question, Councilmember Nguyen. So at this point in time, this is for capital, but when it comes to operations and maintenance, Burlingame, Millbrae, and the town of Hillsborough, we will definitely be in coordination and negotiate what is the fair share of cost and who is responsible for what in this project. So there will be a next step to this. So we will come forward with our next findings and hopefully this maintenance agreement with the council.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the council? Vice Mayor, you know everything? Okay, all right. So I just, Sam, if you can bring back a couple of slides where you show the grant that we received, right there. And also, let me start with asking. So this particular project bring about the additional water coming up from the west side of our city, obviously up the hill. It is my understanding that these new route to bring in the water is sufficient for us to use of domestic water in case, the current domestic water delivery system would be too high of a cost to maintain, or if there's any other, obviously seismic is what your concern would be. That's the basis of this project to begin with. But if you can speak to a little bit more about, the cost of operating this new system compared to the existing one and how it could benefit us in the long run.
Right, so definitely. Because the water line is at a higher elevation, we would have to use pump stations to pump up. So that is a cost savings in terms of energy savings.
Right.
We would have to use pumps. Everything would be gravity fed down. So that is a big, that is a big cost that we would be saving. As far as, maintenance of the lines, depending on what, goes forward when we have our negotiations with Hillsborough, it might be less maintenance for us,
In the long run.
in the long run.
Yeah, and obviously newer system, putting in and with better technology and better equipment down the road, the cost of operation, right? The operational expenses moving forward would be a lot more cost effective, you would imagine?
Right, and during the design of this pipeline, we will definitely be, in contact with Hillsborough so that we can make our comments, making sure that this pipeline happens to be lower maintenance, making sure that we get our crews involved to give those comments as well. So we will be there throughout the design and construction.
And I just also wanted to thank the staff, leading down all the way from a city manager and certainly you as well, Director, is that this $22 million grant that now we receive in collaboration working with Burlingame and Hillsborough. I think to my recollection, this is one of the biggest grants that Millbrae is able to score in recent year that I, for as long as I've been on council, and it goes to show that so long as we work well with our neighbors and be able to work collaboratively and communicate effectively, that we can, as a city, work regionally and collaboratively, be able to score big grants such as this. That I will say this will forever change the way we deliver domestic water to our residents for decades to come, for generations to come. And this grant, basically showed more than 60, 70% of the cost of this capital improvement. And with our investment of about $1.9 million, we will have new way of delivering domestic water for years to come. So I think this speaks really well in terms of how well we're now being able to work regionally and with our neighbors and be able to score these big grants to improve our infrastructure. So great job to our staff on this achievement. Thank you so very, very much.
This is a very exciting project for us, so we were looking forward to starting construction in September of 2025.
Excellent. We're looking forward to it, and make sure there's a ribbon cutting there somewhere. So,
all right.
Thank you so very much for the staff. Anyone else from the council? Otherwise, I'll open up for public comment. Okay. I don't have any speaker slips on this item. Is there anyone online?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Well,
Hey, Mayor,
yes, sir.
One other thing, just for common knowledge while we're discussing this is, as you may know, the ISO rating for insurance purposes with CCFD is 2, which is one of the highest in the state. 1 is the very best. And when you get to that rate, that has an impact on homeowners insurance. So
yes, as
as you could see with the water main line and the fire hydrants and all this could get us to the very lowest one, ISO rating of 1 for insurance purposes. And so that's just something that we'll keep our eye on and monitor. So for fire flow.
Excellent.
Could be a huge benefit in that regard.
Excellent. Councilwoman?
Thank you. It brings me, I've been reading other cities' budget books, probably in more detail than I've read our own. And they often in their budget book, in the narrative in the front, talk about those things, how it comes back to save the residents on that. I think that would be really great for next year's budget book to include those things that are saving them money. Kind of like the discussion earlier, when we can get those things in place to help reduce flood insurance on that. Yeah, good point, City Manager. Thank you.
Yeah, and for the benefit of the public, I mean, this will just be the beginning of one of many other grant programs that we'll be, seeking out from our regional partners regional agencies, as we continue to look forward to, finding ways to improve our infrastructure with these grant programs. So I think this would just be tip of the iceberg. Director, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you so very
I
much.
believe that was beloved, but esteemed was probably
Most beloved and esteemed DPW director we've ever seen. One more thing, Councilmember Woman?
I can make a motion.
Absolutely.
Motion to adopt a resolution approving and authorize city manager to execute a cost-sharing agreement with the town of Hillsborough for the Highline Water Pipeline Project.
Thank you for the motion. Any second?
Second.
Councilmember Bob Nguyen, second motion. Without any further discussion, City Clerk, would you please?
Councilmember Nguyen,
Aye.
Councilmember Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Snyder,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pappen.
Yes.
Mayor Fung.
Aye.
Existing business number 8 passed by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 9, a study session for the consideration of an ordinance prohibiting the use of combustion engine-powered leaf blower. And Ms. Andrea Papajohn joining us.
Andrea, if I may, before we get started. So you
City
may
Manager, go
notice-
ahead.
You may notice that this is a study session, but it's agendized for action. And the reason why we do that is because on a study session, working with the council in the past, sometimes there's direction on guidance for a future, ordinance or whatever the desire of the council is to bring back. So that's why you'll see sometimes on study sessions that it's for action. If there is no action, it's just simply a note receipt and file the item. But this provides you with flexibility to provide further direction if you so desire.
Thank you so much for the clarification. And Ms. Papajohn.
Thank you, City Manager Williams. Mayor Fung, Vice Mayor Pappen, council members, I'm Andrea Papajohn, City of Millbrae. Thank you for this opportunity. So yes, this is a study session for the consideration of an ordinance prohibiting the use of combustion engine-powered leaf blowers. Next slide, please. So in 2021, California adopted AB 1346 that banned the sale of new gas-powered small off-road engines effective January of 2024. Those small off-road engines are defined as spark ignition engines with rated power at or below 19 kilowatts, which would be less than 25 horsepower, and that would include leaf blowers. And then in September 2024, September 24th, council directed staff to research and draft an ordinance prohibiting the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Next slide, please. So in this presentation, we'll look at considerations for noise, emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, level of restrictions, operations, and also enforcement and fines. Next slide, please. So some benefits of banning gas leaf blowers are that it reduces greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, and noise. So first, just to touch on emissions, banning gas leaf blowers is not one of the 43 measures in our climate action plan. So when the climate action plan was adopted in 2020, there was not a specific calculation to show exactly how much reduction we would get for banning gas leaf blowers. However, we do know that it does reduce greenhouse gases, so certainly it's in line with our climate action goals. Gas leaf blowers also emit very high levels of air pollution, including oxides of nitrogen, NOx, reactive organic gases, ROGs, and particulate matter. So NOx and ROGs together contribute to a formation of ozone, which does threaten or really does have adverse impacts on our health. And then just considering noise, noise is measured in decibels, as you probably know. But noise, just to give you some perspective, so in decibels, heavy rainfall is 50 decibels. Normal conversation is 60 decibels. And a hairdryer is approximately 90 decibels. So now if we look at the comparison of electric to gas leaf blowers, there is a big range. Electric leaf blowers can range from 64 to 80 decibels. And then there's some overlap with gas leaf blowers. They can range from 70 to 100 decibels and even greater. So it really does depend on the model, what mode it's in. There's low and high modes sometimes, and whether it's for residential use or even commercial. I would like to make a comment that Burlingame tried limiting the noise to 65 decibels. And this was back in 2012 when they first adopted their ordinance. And what they did is they required a sticker on the leaf blower that was issued by Public Works. But enforcing was really not feasible because it was so hard for code enforcement to have the capacity to verify like each leaf blower, go out and find them. And then also landscapers were really not interested in getting their machinery verified. So when they banned gas leaf blowers, they actually eliminated this decibel restriction or regulation. Okay, next slide, please. So we wanted to show this as an example. We heard from council that you wanted to kind of look at maybe what Burlingame was doing as an example. And in July of 2012, that's their regulation dates back to then, they developed 3 zones. And so the benefit of the 3 zones is that there was never gas leaf blowers on a Monday or a Wednesday. So you can see like in the blue zone, properties in this zone could only use leaf blowers on Thursdays from 8 to 5. And then you could see the other 2 zones as well. We did hear from Burlingame that it has been really tough to enforce. Their enforcement is complaint-based only. So they may get a call from a neighbor saying, hey, my neighbor's using a gas blower, and that's how they are pursuing their enforcement. They really are working more on outreach and education rather than penalties right now for their enforcement. Okay, next slide, please. So this is really for illustrative purposes. What we did is just wanted to give you an example of if you wanted to set a regulation based on zones, we could use districts or any other, way to create zones that you desire. And then you could say, for example, in District 1, we could only permit either electric leaf blowers, let's say on Mondays from 8 to 6, and so on. Yes, okay, next slide, please. Now, with the ordinance in Burlingame, there were some exceptions and fines as well. So I wanted to go over just some of the exceptions to their ordinance, just for your consideration. For example, non-residential properties east of Caltrain and 101, that they could operate daily from 8 to 6. There isn't actually many residential properties east of 101, so they didn't feel they needed to regulate that on a weekly basis. They also gave the opportunity for residents to use leaf blowers on Saturdays and Sundays with limited hours. And then for multifamily residential, they can operate Tuesday and Friday, obviously because there's potentially more area to manage. Schools can operate Tuesdays and Fridays from 8 to 6. And city employees can operate leaf blowers Monday through Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. They would require more time as well. And then there's a consideration for large properties, for example, over 4 acres may operate Monday through Friday and Saturdays and Sundays as well, for obvious reasons because of the how big their properties are. And then if there's a holiday, leaf blower falls on a holiday, can continue the following weekday. So there's all these considerations for these unique cases. There's also a fine that would be incurred, $50, and we were advised by our council perhaps to consider a step-up penalty For subsequent violations, maybe the second violation could be $100 and up to a maximum of $1,000 fines. Okay, next slide, please. And then this is just some follow-up to the questions that we heard from you at the last meeting, or at the September 24th meeting. There could be a grace period, so if an ordinance is desired, then there could be a 6-month grace period, so it could be effective, let's say, July 1st of 2025. We reached out to Scavenger, and they do dispose of gas-powered leaf blowers. You have to empty the gas and oil, but they can be disposed, and there is a small fee. The lifespan of gas-powered leaf blowers, it's approximately 1,500 hours or 10 years. So, eventually those will, obviously expire, and then they'll need to be replaced by electric leaf blowers since there's no sale of gas leaf blowers in California. And then the average cost of leaf blowers, so when we looked at the average cost, if you look at outdoor supply, you can find a leaf blower for a resident, approximately $200, and like their backpacks are about $1,300 for landscapers. However, there is quite a big range, and they can get a lot more expensive, especially if you're looking for a higher miles per hour, which is a faster flow and higher performance. And then you also want to keep the decibel level down. They can even get up to over $2,000 for commercial landscapers. City of Millbrae currently has an incentive for purchase of leaf blowers, and we looked at other cities that have incentives as well, and it's in the table on the right. So we currently offer $100 for residents. They come in and provide a receipt and show us that they're a resident. We'll process that. And $200 for a commercial landscaper if they have a business license. Next slide, please. So that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Papajohn. Questions from the council? Go ahead.
I may have more, because I know the vice mayor cares about this, and I appreciate that. We're only talking leaf blowers. What about lawn mowers and edgers?
Yep.
Does it include all of the gas-powered ones?
So that is, we left that up to the council's discretion. When we looked at other cities, there are 5 other cities who regulate landscaping equipment, and all of them only ban leaf blowers.
But according to the new law, gas-powered lawnmowers and edgers and trimmers and all of that, that's all banned for the sale.
That's correct. Anything under 25 horsepower, any of those small off-road engines are banned. So yes, you're correct.
I'm very flexible on the ordinance in terms of just keeping it at leaf blowers, but I think it would be great if we worked with South City Scavengers, that if anybody did want to get rid of any of their other gas-powered equipment with the same rules, get rid of the oil or the gas the right way, not down a storm drain, but that we can get rid of these devices because they're all very noisy. They're all big emitters on that. So thank you for the work. I want to hear what the vice mayor wants, and I'll probably go her direction.
Okay, thank you for the comment.
Thank you.
Does somebody else want to make a comment? Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Riley.
Thank you for the very good presentation, very detailed, thank you. So it's very important to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, noise, and air pollution in Millbrae. It's affected everybody. However, we need to think about this small, hard work gardeners, their financial ability to adapt this ordinance. I'm glad we have this ordinance for includes a grace period and the compliance for the financial incentive. So I have 2 questions. One, will this financial incentive only aim to gardeners who have a business license in Millbrae?
Well, that was our thought. I don't know how else we're open to, what council decides. Typically, it would be someone with a business license. It's just easier to identify that they would be using it in Millbrae.
Okay, since you mentioned there is a fine, $50 or $100, how can we enforce this?
Yeah, that is a very big challenge. Enforcement is difficult because my understanding is that you have to have evidence that someone is using a gas leaf blower. And so our code enforcement officer would have to be, on site and able to, issue a violation at the time of the event. Perhaps a neighbor or someone could submit a video, but I would need to defer to our legal counsel if videos are accepted as evidence for a violation.
That's right. So the person who's witnessing it would have to submit either video or pictures. I believe that videos would be acceptable. Any documentation to show that there's been a violation.
So question for legal. If, let's say, for example, if enforcement happens and due to a neighbor taking a video of someone using a gas power equipment, such as a leaf blower, an enforcement officer come out, give them a ticket, and if the ticketee, for lack of a better word, the one being ticketed, contests that ticket, right? How do us, who is the issuing agency, provide the evidence with chain of custody and all of that, to properly document such a violation to the extent that we can defend that ticket if the video was not being recorded by our own staff?
So each situation would be viewed separately and it would go through code enforcement, just like any other code enforcement violations. So the officer would look at what the evidence is.
So I guess my question is geared towards whether or not our own officer will need to gather those evidence himself or herself in order for that to be admissible.
Well, it would depend on a case-by-case basis. The officer would look at the evidence, whether it's gathered, through the city staff or through the code enforcement officer or submitted by private parties. All the evidence would be considered.
Because I could easily see an argument where a video being submitted by somebody, by the public, that the authenticity of that video could be challenged.
Right, so the credibility of the evidence would be analyzed on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, fair enough. All right, who's first? I'm sorry, why don't I let you finish? You done? Okay, thank you. And then
For the new city council, city manager, it's been a couple of years, but I recall we approved increasing the number of staff titles that are eligible to do enforcement actions on that. And it might be good for all of the new council members to see that it isn't just Lamont Mack of code enforcement that can do some of this, that it actually can be other people. So that's just one thing that I thought when Council Member Riley brought that up. My other question is, if it's a commercial operator, they're going to have a name on a truck on that, and they're going to know over time that they can't buy the equipment. But my guess is we're not going to fine them the first time. It'll be, usually there's a couple of like fix-it tickets. You don't have to pay for it before we do that. That's how the program rolls out. But usually on environmental programs, we don't try to hit someone in the beginning. We give them a little bit of time there.
Vice Mayor, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't think it would be hard to establish. Somebody's taking a picture of a gardener in front of a house that's in Millbrae, and it would be not that difficult. And gardeners generally, one comes on Monday, another one Tuesday. All the neighbors know exactly when somebody's gardener appears. The business license aspect, I do think it's important, but what is a business license for a landscaper or gardener? Do we know what the cost is?
I would have to look into that.
We might want to, please look into it, but we might want to offer some incentives for people to get their business license as well. I will say the ones for attorneys operating within the city is way too high. So, that might provide further incentives for people because we do want them to get a business license. So if someone is getting a fix-it ticket or whatever, I think we want to try to encourage them to do so. Now, I'm not quite sure how we would go about that, but because it's already set in statute. But I don't know if we approve an ordinance like this, whether we can include some sort of an incentive as it relates to a business license. We'd probably have to have legal counsel look at something like that. But I do think that is a good idea moving forward here. Interesting as to the aspects of Burlingame. So they're restricting it to certain areas of the city, certain days of the week?
Correct. And depending on what the 3 zones, leaf blowers are allowed. First, it was gas, because this was adopted in July 2012.
All right.
And now they have banned gas. So now you can only use an electric leaf blower on the day.
Okay, now I understand.
Okay.
I don't think we should be that restrictive. As to our, I don't know what the square acreage is of Burlingame, but Millbrae is only 3.2 square miles. The same reason I think many of us want to do away with districts. I don't think we want our ordinance here to have districts as well. So I would not be supportive of that aspect of it here. I would be interested to know, since this also applies to city staff, if we can restrict our city staff as far as the noise aspect goes. And our city staff is very educated when something like this comes up. So it would be interesting to find out from them how quiet they could be without hurting their operations, kind of as a guide for other people in the future. And when we're talking about schools, it's our city staff that does that. So I think we would hopefully lead by example, going down this path, because that would be helpful. And I mean, the hope was too, that by going to electric leaf blowers, that the sound would be lessened. The noise pollution would go down. But it sounds like that's really still open for interpretation.
It is. I mean, it's, we don't have a lot of definitive data to really see, okay, we want this high performance leaf blower because we want to do a good job to clean our parks. But we need, the higher miles per hour, the more horsepower, and then it's louder. Then if you're going to try to reduce the decibels, it's just going to get more expensive. So you just have to consider all that trade-offs.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of advanced designs, AKA like the Dyson vacuum. There are different aspects to get a lot of suction from that as opposed to get a lot of gas power or horsepower, as you put it, on these things. So I think we are definitely setting up a good example here. I think we also need to note too that operators within our city operate in other cities. So they're probably getting the benefit of whatever rebate we give. They could probably get it in another city if they have business licenses in those cities. That
I would be so, interested to find that data. I'm just not sure how to get data on landscapers and how many cities they are. I mean, I think we'd really have to spend time looking into that to get something conclusive.
And I'm not saying we should.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting, because we've all made comments about small operators. So I would think they would be able to take advantage from Burlingame, Millbrae, and whatever other cities they operate in. So we're not suggesting we restrict the rebate to just people that operate in Millbrae. That would be inappropriate. So again, I think the business people would probably be taking advantage of whatever rebates exist in all the cities they operate in. as they probably should.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think, just thank you for all this work. Again, I think I would not limit or set up zones. I just don't think that's necessary in Millbrae. I mean, the benefit here is we reduce our greenhouse gases. Hopefully, the noise is decreased somewhat, and we are heading in the right direction. And then to the final note here, we could add this onto our greenhouse gas reduction plan. It wasn't a part of it, but we can just do an amendment.
When we update
Yeah.
the climate action plan, we
That's
could
the
add it.
one.
Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Eduardo, if you just want to, if you wouldn't mind, please going up just to the very last slide, the one before the last slide, and yes, right there, please. Those are the cities on the bottom right who actually offer incentives. So currently, Millbrae, Burlingame, Atherton, Portola Valley, Menlo Park, and Woodside. And perhaps other cities, will be adding incentives as well. Those are the ones that we found had any incentives today.
Well, I see a significant increase here in the Burlingame residential versus commercial. How come theirs is, they go from 100 to 500?
I think I apologize.
No, go right ahead, please.
Apologize.
No.
I believe it's because there is such a wide range in cost for commercial, electric leaf blowers. The backpack ones are more expensive. Like I said, if you want the higher performing ones, they're just more expensive. So that would be my explanation of that, but I could ask them to be sure. Just from our own data, that's what we find.
Yeah, I mean, can we offer a greater incentive if and how do you determine, would my gardener have to say that, because he's a professional, I hope?
License?
No, just a Millbrae
I hope
business
he's licensed
license.
too. Is it just a matter of what you're buying it? How do you determine who's getting the residential and the commercial?
Well, if you have a business license, you would get the commercial
Okay.
one if you're a resident. Yeah, I mean, we want to give out the incentives.
Right. Okay, so, again, whatever our business license fee is, maybe we want to increase the commercial rebate on that. And do we have any access to, are there any grants from the Air Quality Board that would help us in these rebates?
We did receive a grant from PCE.
Yeah, I was going to mention
Okay.
that just for public information, that this funding comes from a PCE pool of funds from a grant. And so the policy, as Ms. Babajan said, we've got $22,000 that we can allocate, and we can distribute that at, $100, $500. I don't know where the other funding comes from Burlingame, if they supplement that through, other revenue streams, but ours is earmarked on that grant funding. And also, while I have the mic, it's, the business license fee is $80 a year annually for landscapers and gardening services.
Again, I want to bring up the fact the attorney one is way too high, okay? If they're only paying $80, we'll address that later. So $80 and you get a $200 rebate. Again, with the fact, the amount you just said, Mr. Williams?
22,000 for the PCE.
Yeah.
From the PC grant. That's currently.
I mean, if you divide that out between, like, how many people we're going to be able to cover here? 2,200 households, if it's residential, or, I'd just be curious here.
Perhaps it might be helpful to start looking at how many landscaper business licenses we have in the city.
Right.
As a starting point,
There you go.
right? Okay, anyhow,
Very good.
we'll come back to that. All right, Councilmember Nguyen and then Councilmember Schneider, and then after that, I'd like to go to the public comment, and then we can come back for more discussion.
Okay, so I heard earlier about data, specifically Burlingame. Do we know how well they did after implementing all these measures?
So with their recent banning the gas leaf blower,
Yes.
I did hear from their sustainability manager, and she said enforcement has been I apologize. Let me clarify. Did you want to hear about enforcement or just how their program is going?
Yeah, enforcement is part of the picture. It's more like, just I want to see how the overall program is working and if it's meeting its intended goals.
I do not know how many rebates or incentives they have issued, and I can certainly get that information for you. What I did hear when I asked how they're regulating it, I heard that it's been very difficult to enforce because they just can't go after each landscaper, and they have no incentive to really want to come and they just don't have the code enforcement officer time to go out and enforce.
I see. Also, just the fact that it's not, it's something that you're banning, right? Like, does that create a tangible effect on like reduction of noise and particulate matter being ejected from these blowers?
Over time, it would, but also the state has a law now that's banning the sale. So eventually, they're going to expire and there will not be any more gas leaf blowers. This would just accelerate that, assuming people comply and assuming we can enforce it.
I see. So we don't have clear data on how well it's going over there.
And I don't know the number of incentives that they've given out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, to the Vice Mayor's question, the application for whether it's a resident, more so a business, is let's just make sure on the application saying, have you applied? Are you operating in other cities and have you asked for a rebate from them? Or have you asked for a rebate from the California Air Resources Board? Easy. Then we'll have the data. We'll begin to collect that data. And in fact, I think the city in general for a lot of its applications should be asking a lot more information on that. To the business license, the best thing about the tree license ordinance now requires all of the people trimming at least city trees that they are an actual business that knows what they're doing. So maybe we also need to do an educational campaign saying, you got to have a business license. I think we've become recently aware of just how many businesses in Millbrae are operating without a license. The Vice Mayor's question about the cost, it seems like half the cities, maybe a third of the cities in San Mateo County have been looking at their business licenses. Some are trying to flatten the number of costs in there. That'll be for the future city council, but looking at business license, I think would be an excellent idea for Millbrae. When we talk about noise, it's decibels, but different noise is more annoying. And it's actually this annoyance scale, which the FAA created, the Federal Aviation Administration. So rain at 50 decibels is like, but a gas-powered leaf blower is like, can I kill my neighbor on that? So it's not just the decibels, it's the type of noise. A motorcycle is more irritating than rain on that. So I think we would get those. And the reason most cities have gone to having regions or districts is so that you don't have a leaf blower around your house every day of the week. In Millbrae, the number one complaint I get or that I see on Nextdoor are the leaf blowers at Green Hills. So if we were to discuss a time, I think we've all talked about 8 o'clock. I think it's the people that live near Green Hills Country Club would love to get to sleep in at least one day a week. And it seems like the leaf blowers and the chainsaws start operating more like at 7 a.m. And I'm sure we've got code enforcement. It's all over Nextdoor periodically on that. And if we just make the time, let people sleep in a little bit. You know, maybe they start later on a Saturday. My neighbor's leaf blower comes at 3 o'clock on Saturdays, just when I'm outside gardening and then I have to smell the fumes. So I'll be so happy when they're electric. But to be honest, you want to reduce the particulate matter, go to a leaf vacuum. We should have something about leaf vacuums versus blowers. And then finally, I do think we should, at least commercially, at least have an education program on getting rid of the other gas-powered equipment as quickly as possible. I'm thinking of the chainsaws, the gas-powered chainsaws versus I have a little electric one, but they're still scary. So, but you know, you guys will figure that out. It sounds like it's just leaf blowers here. So let's start with that and then ratchet the other three. And good job. But a lot of education. There's a lot of, I'm sure we know you're going to do the education. But change the application. and collect that data.
Good idea. And we do have a backup slide with the application, but we can add that in there. Next one.
Okay.
So we could add something in there that collects more data. Yeah.
I would only add too, Burlingame's general fund is 90 million to our 40 million. Maybe that's why they can afford $500.
So we have a public comment. We'll take a public comment, and then we'll come back for council discussion. We have Mr. Ken Smith.
Thank you for your detailed report. Very thorough. Really appreciate it. Good evening, folks. How are you today? A little informal, but yeah, leaf blowers. So I sent someone's phone. So I sent out 36 text messages. So excited about the program, and I think you guys really had a lot of thoughtful questions. As I was kind of some of the questions I wanted to think about and talk about as we move forward to this next chapter in our environment with just leaf blowers. I think in my mind that there's a couple of subject matters here. One is that the primary reason why we're doing this is because of air pollution, the primary reason. And I think I want to stick with that. And that's my recommendation. As I talk to my neighbors, and I talk to a lot of people, and they're all willing to move forward to getting rid of their old equipment and moving forward to the battery-operated or corded-operated equipment. But I think let's just keep it simple so we're successful. And I think Burlingame has way too many restrictions and way too many rules. We're not Burlingame, we're Millbrae, we're fairly small. We're a nice, friendly group. That leads me right into enforcement. We're going to put neighbor against neighbor by videoing them, whether they're gardeners or they are personally doing it. This is not the way we are. We are much better than Burlingame. People are going to be respectful for each other. Yes, Ann, I do agree. Maybe 9 o'clock would be a good start time, and that's something we would want to put into our ordinance. But you can't do it on this day, and you can't do it on this day. Well, some days I got 10 minutes to do something. I'm not going to worry about what day of the week it is. I'm going to go out and do a little yard work. I'm going to get her done. You know what I'm saying? So with those being said, this is a great program. I'm passing the word along. Again, as in your great report, the nutrition of the equipment is going to happen all by itself. So the enforcement is not possible. I really wouldn't spend a lot of time on that particular piece there. Again, a lot of great points that everybody made here tonight. Again, beautiful report, very well detailed, but it's a little too sophisticated. I hate to say it. And I'm not saying we're not sophisticated individuals, but we're not Burlingame. And so with that being said, please take in all the things I just said in consideration when you do your study and approve the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ken Smith. Ms. Papa John? I don't think we have anybody online. We only got one more online attendees.
That's correct, Mayor. There's no speaker online.
Okay, all right. I'll come back to you. So I think as we look at all of this, I try to, every time we get into policy discussions about ordinances and enforcement and all of this, I go back to the why and what goals we're trying to achieve. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Papa John. A moment ago, you said all these complaints that Burlingame had received, the vast majority of it was the enforcement. Vast majority of them were driven by complaint, and they were putting in complaints, and code enforcement personnel goes out and investigating that particular incident. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so to that end, most likely, would you say not, more so than not, that it was driven by noise?
Well, I guess if they ban gas blowers yet, noise or pollution, probably.
Yeah, I mean, the only time when you really realize your neighbor, you're in your house, 9 a.m. in the morning, trying to make breakfast, whatever that might be. The moment you realize, oh, well, your neighbor's, the lawnmower or leaf blower is on is when you hear the noise, right? As otherwise, you don't know what they're doing unless you're constantly looking out the window and looking at your neighbor, which I assume that people have better things to do with their lives. So to that end, I think it's relatively majority safe to say that majority of these complaints are noise-driven. And City Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a noise ordinance, do we not?
We do, Mayor. We do have a current noise ordinance.
And there's noise nuisance and certain time of the day and over a certain decibel, is that correct?
Correct. That's right. And so any noise that we're talking about here, gardening equipment, if it's a consistent noise that we get a complaint, code enforcement, will monitor that. And so to your point, we already do have something on the ordinance
So we have
for noise.
Right. So we have something that we can enforce upon if noise become an issue. So we just want to make sure that step number one. Number two, I think it's important, and it's been said in the past, part of your staff report, enforcement on this is extremely problematic because it takes time to go out and investigate it, collect evidence, and then if they were contested, then, it gets more difficult, right? But it seems to me that in order for us, and as I look at this whole thing from a 35,000-foot view, there is two issues that we're trying to address and two sort of overarching goal that we try to achieve. Number one, to not become a noise pollution, to prevent the noise pollution. Number two is to prevent the gasoline engine to emit greenhouse gas pollution. Those are the two things that we're trying to achieve. So with that said, what is the best way to achieve these goals? I think that's what we're here to discuss, if I'm not mistaken. So with that said, I think as far as we want folks to stop using gasoline-powered leaf blowers and change over to the electric one because they're less noisy and they do not emit the greenhouse gas that a gas equipment would. So to that end, in my mind, the best way to go about it is education and incentive. Incentivize people to do the right thing is always better than penalizing people who do not, unless we have to. And we discuss how difficult it is to enforce. We also discuss how difficult it is to, the zoning and all of this is it's just not easy to do, and it's not effective. And it costs us even more to try to enforce it. So if we can do an effective educational campaign and incentivizing to do the right thing, we're looking at how some of the commercial landscaper and how many of them are in the city. Perhaps we can come up with a incentive program based on the grant that we already receive, how to effectively address and incentivize them to get them off the gas-powered equipment so that when they come into the city and work and getting their lawn done, they can use the proper equipment to reduce the noise pollution and also the greenhouse gas pollution. Where the other part, where we're trying to reduce the noise, I think we already have something on the book that would help reduce the noise nuisance. And one of the speakers a moment ago did mention, and it was also in the back of my mind, when we're legislating something, such as an ordinance such as this, we want to make sure that it does not become an opportunity to be weaponized, right, where neighbors pit against each other. Just like what the speaker has said, we're a very, very friendly and nice neighborhood that we want neighbors to be friendly to one another, and to be cordial and civil with one another. Yes, laws are important to keep the peace, and that's why we have police officers and we have laws, and everybody need to abide by it. But at the same time, we need to incentivize those folks to do the right thing and help everybody to stay within the four corners of our law. That's kind of where my mindset is as far as all of this, and happy to take more comments. Vice Mayor has her hands up, and then we'll come back to Councilwoman Schneider and then Councilmember Nguyen after.
Millbrae has always led by example.
Okay.
In the right way. We were the first to ban polystyrene. We were the first to ban plastic bags. I don't think we should sit back and say, hey, we have a noise ordinance and that's good enough. That's not the way we should be doing this. We are offering incentives. We are offering step-ups, even if we just say, you know, when it first hits July 1st, 2025, maybe you do a month of warnings. But we need to take a step. We need to reduce greenhouse gases as quickly as possible. Is this going to change the entire world? No. But it is a step in the right direction. It is in keeping with state law, as the mayor is always bringing up here. We're just doing it sooner, and we're encouraging compliance. It'll also help us encourage people to get business licenses that are operating within our city. This is the right thing to do now. It is not something, look, people will call code enforcement when their neighbor's cutting a tree. It happens all the time here, and it's confidential, but we have to look out for one another. This is not something I think the public is going to fight. We're doing this for the right reasons. The first one is the reduction in greenhouse gases. The second one, we hope, is a reduction in noise. And noise happens all the time. That is more difficult to enforce than anything here. You can get a noise monitor on your phone. But I don't think we should be concerned about this. The cost of enforcement. There's so many things on the books here. Littering, cigarette butts, graffiti. I mean, all these things that are not currently enforced, many of which should be. But I think it's important for us to set a standard, to keep Millbrae at a higher standard, as we have done historically. So I think this ordinance is important. And yes, education is always an important aspect of that. And I believe the grant would require us to take formal action in order to comply with the grant. I haven't read the grant yet. But I like the way we're going here. And I do like the fact that we keep it simple, not going overboard like Burlingame did. And let's just see how that goes and see what results we get from this. And to Councilmember Nguyen's point here, we don't generally do the environmental impact report as a small city. So we didn't know what the environmental impact report would be in banning plastic bags. That's more done at a state level. We did work with the Grocery Association at that because we were smaller. So again, this is all done for the right reasons. I think it's very important, and I do think we help our public through the process as we proceed here, as we're always known to do. So I think this is important to present as an official ordinance, not as, why do anything at all if you're just going to wait for people to, wait till their machine dies and they can't get a new one. I think providing incentives like this is important because it encourages people to take the next step. As the speaker said, people will be excited to get their rebate and go out there and get a new machine. I think that's important. Thank you.
Councilmember Nguyen?
Yeah, so my perspective is more on just the examples that were given by Burlingame. And I know we're a different city, but that's all the information we can draw from. And I'm just not 100% encouraged because the enforcement seems to be a challenge from what you described. And, you know, we just live in a practical world, right? If we could just fully enforce everything for, you know, reduction of noise and particulate matter, then I'll be all for this. I'm just having trouble seeing how, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we only have one code enforcement officer? No?
That is correct, council member.
Okay, so only one, right? And we'd have to timeshare this person's already overburdened with all the other code enforcement. I'm not sure how that's going to really fit in with all the stuff that we got to take care of. And because of that, I'm just not 100% confident on this. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Number one, this is one of the best things that you can do to reduce not just carbon for climate change, but particulate matter. Millbrae, all of us are living at above the 90 percentile at the risk level for particulate matter, likely because we're between two freeways, El Camino Real, Caltrain, BART, which even as electric generates a lot of dirt in the air, and SFO. This is an immediate thing that will help people's health, asthma, and diabetes, heart attacks. All of this has an impact on not just the carbon for climate change, but the particulate matter, and then noise. So all three are an immediate action. We have talked about this several times now. We have the tool called C-Click-Fix, which has been very instrumental in people being, you can put your own name in there. I've done some with my own name, and I've done one anonymously. Typically, I use my name. But that way, we can get data on how big the problem is. And honestly, if you are a landscape business and you are running and operating a green business, this is part of your business strategy. You want to be a green business. And as Gina said, we're offering incentives. So at this point, it's going to happen anyway. We're just moving it up a little bit faster. I would like to make a motion to direct staff to come back at our last council meeting for the vice mayor and me. So come back in 2 weeks with an ordinance and let's get this done. But I have a motion on the table, but I'm happy to take friendly amendments.
All right, Vice Mayor.
I'll second
Mayor.
the motion with a point here. This is an action item. So I think we're going ahead with this. But to the point of Councilmember Nguyen, we don't need to worry. I mean, it's the code enforcement officer is not going to be driving up and down the street trying to find these people. This is, you know, it's not that strict an ordinance here. It's a tool in the code enforcement officer's book, like every other ordinance here. So it's not like the cost of enforcement is burdensome. It's simply not. This is something we make ordinance, we provide them to city staff, they are there. Again, it's not like they're gonna go to every house and see, you know, do you have this or don't you have this? That's not how this works, and it's really not a valid reason not to support something like this. To find out what's working in Burlingame here, I mean, the cities are doing this for the right reasons. It's to reduce the greenhouse gases, and as Councilmember Schneider said, the other benefits to the community and the overall health of the community. We are offering incentives to help encourage people to participate here. But this is not a militant city ordinance where things have to, it's going to be Lamont's only job is to go out and find these people. There are a lot of other ordinance which he enforces throughout the city. And we didn't not do them because it would be burdensome. So I've seconded the motion for approval.
I just want to be clear. The motion is to bring back an ordinance for adoption, right? To ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Is that correct? I just want to be clear on what the ordinance, what the direction to the staff is.
If I could ask for clarification from the motion maker here and from the city
That's what
staff.
I just asked.
I would say, and along with that staff report, because this council wants to get into the weeds of education and enforcement, maybe have some information about education enforcement on that. Education always comes well before enforcement. It'll take a lot of the fear out of it, but it's the right thing to do. And that can all be in the staff report.
I'm asking for clarification, if I might, from city staff. Can we propose an ordinance tonight? Or do we have to come back? I can't understand, it says study session for consideration of an ordinance.
You can, that's why it's a study session, but action, if there's a motion and a second and a majority of the council directs the preparation of an ordinance with specific things, that's within your purview.
So we could actually propose with instructions an ordinance.
Correct.
The ordinance, this is the study session to get the feedback for the drafting of the ordinance, which would come back at a future meeting for its reading.
And I would imagine an ordinance require resolutions and all the lingos within the legal realm in order to make that ordinance a legal document.
Correct, for ordinance.
I don't suppose we have that tonight, but I suppose the vice mayor is looking at some high-level directions on what that ordinance look
If I
like.
can clarify, as his attorney is saying, you're not going to adopt an ordinance tonight.
Right.
That's not the
Correct.
action is,
To prepare
do
an
you want
ordinance.
to have zones or do you want to have zones? Do you want to ban gas, leaf blowers and weed eaters and lawnmowers, or you just want to ban gas? That's the direction we're looking for
Okay.
if the council
Right.
says go draft an ordinance. The other thing I may note in terms of education, an ordinance, there's always the first reading, and then there's the second reading. And after the second reading, it becomes effective 30 days after the second reading. So
Correct.
there's plenty of time, 45 days plus, to have an education component. But the ordinance can also be crafted that it takes effect, even though it's adopted, it takes effect, let's say, July 1st of 2025, with an education run-up period
90
of
days,
time
whatever that
before
might
it goes
be.
into- And I'm not saying, I'm just saying no, but I'm just using that as an example, that's all.
Clarification, could you please?
Well, my comment was, so, as the maker of the motion, to direct staff to come back with an ordinance. The ordinance recommendation could have an implementation plan in it that might say, the state law goes into effect on January 1st. So let's look at January
The
1st.
state law's already in effect.
It is.
The state law is
Already in effect,
January
okay.
1st of this year.
But then the sale,
No, this is.
no, because they're still selling gas power leaf blowers.
California banned the sale of gas-powered equipment
At the
July
beginning of
1st
the year.
2024,
Of 2024.
this year.
We need to work with a couple of our merchants, but maybe it was gas-powered lawnmowers. But I thought I
They're
saw.
over 25
I thought I saw,
horsepower, it's okay.
I thought I saw leaf blowers in a recent ad. But no, my point, city manager, was let's put a date in that staff thinks is reasonable, given your workload. And then we can always debate, hopefully in 2 weeks, so that the vice mayor and I can be a part of this on that. But we can debate the actual effective date on it. And I'm not worried about education, but I work in this field, so I know how all of our programs roll out. Our new council members and the public may not understand how things roll out. So, is that clear? I'm sorry,
No,
I'm
not
operating
clear
on
enough.
2 hours sleep in 40 hours, so.
Can I clarify the motion maker's motion?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm hoping. The motion is to prepare an ordinance, a more simplistic ordinance with no zones. And then, and I don't think we should start with time limits at this point. But I would hope the ordinance also encourages our city staff to try to comply with the lowest possible noise levels. And then I think the July 1st, 2025 date really gives people a lot of time to comply.
So there is a date.
There is a date
You have to have
here.
some kind of
Leaf
date or
blowers.
it'll never happen. So,
There
yeah.
is a date
Okay.
here. And I would suggest too that we add to any new business licenses in this realm that they would have to comply with this part of the education. Is that simple enough?
And I'm going to add a third, that we look at See-Click Fix and we make sure that we have a category for gas-powered landscape equipment. It may already be there,
I don't think you
but
can
it's
do
really
it
easy to add a
until.
category because it helps us collect data that way. One last point. So I accept the friendly emotion. Hey, City Clerk, did we get the language? Are you okay? You need the Vice Mayor to
I
read
think
it
we have
again?
the language, and if I may recommend, so the state law has a definition of what they're banning. And so we can just take that same, it's two-stroke gas-powered, I can't remember the terminology in the law, but it's, I want to say mini engines, or I can't remember the term, but if we
Or-
use the same term,
Small off-road engines?
yes. yeah,
Well, they
so
use the term
two-stroke.
off-road, which is really weird in a lot of that,
But I
this
think we're
language.
consistent with what the state law is banning, if that.
Absolutely.
Can bring that back, would seem to make sense, because then it's consistent, and there's been discussion on landscape companies not only do business in Millbrae, they do business, throughout the region, so this may be an
And we-
easier.
And back to the Vice Mayor,
Compliance.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
City Manager. It just dawned on me, it is Project 40 under the President of the United States Environmental Cabinet, and that may go away. We should probably do a lot of screen shopping. It has a bunch of metrics that puts Millbrae in a number of at-risk categories, including the east side for flooding and traffic, parts per million diesel, parts per million regular, as well as all of Millbrae, parts per million, and heat waves. We should capture that data because we don't have our environmental justice work in place, just in case that website disappears, which it likely will. I can send you the link to Project 40. It's President of the United States, Project 40. And it's where 40% of all infrastructure dollars were supposed to be targeted at communities that fit within these criteria. So we have a motion and a second.
Right, I heard that there's a motion and a second, and, yes,
Just to
legal?
clarify on the business license fee, so that's a separate requirement from compliance with the ordinance, and it applies to any businesses that operate landscaping within the city. And-
I would suggest that part of the ordinance includes how to get your business license within the city of Millbrae.
We already have an ordinance to require business license.
I understand that you are notifying the individuals in the ordinance that they should have a business license. You're just, here's how you get one. You're just providing more information. Is that possible?
The business license is already required under the municipal code.
But it's kind of separate forms.
I
In other
think that
words.
would go to the public education component.
yeah.
that
Okay,
we
fine.
could- Yeah.
I think we're already educating the public that to have a business in Millbrae, to operate a business in Millbrae, that you need a business license. Irrelevant whether or not you use gas equipment or any other businesses, including attorneys.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's too high, I'm telling you
well. And that's not on the agenda.
now. I know.
So,
Just to clarify for the
yes,
procedure for
legal.
the ordinance, this is, at this point, the motion is to direct staff to
Draft an
incorporate the
ordinance.
city council's comments, to come back and draft an ordinance that would be introduced at an upcoming city council meeting, and it would require 2 meetings before it can go into effect. It has to have a second reading.
right, okay.
So just to clarify, it wouldn't happen before the term of the outgoing council members, but the process could certainly be started.
We have done second readings at our reorganization meetings.
You can waive the second reading, can't you?
But we could do it. Even if we got the first one in while the Vice Mayor and I are still here, please. Just like those redwood trees down at the Pluition plant.
I think you can only waive the second reading beyond the title. A second reading is required.
All right, well, let's, so we have a motion on the table, we have a second, and unless there's any other further comment from this council. Okay, all right, City Clerk, would you please?
Councilmember Nguyen,
Nay.
Councilmember Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Snyder,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pappen,
Yes.
Mayor Fung.
Aye,
Item number 9 passed by a vote of 5-0 with incorporation of the city council's comments. That to bring back
I believe it's a 4-1.
4-1,
Councilmember
sorry.
Nguyen
Sorry about that, 4-1.
dissented, yeah.
For item number 9, to return with a ordinance for introduction with council comments.
All right, so, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Papajohn. And we have item number 10, adoption of a resolution local support authorizing the filing of a grant application for funding and technical assistance towards the City of Millbrae's implementation of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Transit-Oriented Communities Policies and Climate Initiatives Program.
Good evening. 10:15 when all the magic happens.
There we go.
So yeah, this is an item this evening. We're seeking council support of a resolution for us to proceed with grant funding. Next slide. This is related to MTC's Transit-Oriented Communities Policy. It's referred to as the TOC policy. And this provides a grant funding opportunity to help local agencies become compliant with the new TOC policy. I'll talk a little bit about that next. So the Transit-Oriented Communities overview, this was a policy adopted by MTC in 2022 through Plan Bay Area 2050. It seeks to implement criteria in local jurisdictions that have major transit hubs. And of course, we have Caltrain and BART here in our community in Millbrae. And as part of Bay Area 2050's goal is to focus development on areas where we have regional transportation investments by encouraging appropriate densities, parking controls, affordable housing, station access, where our transit hubs are located. Now, MTC says that compliance is voluntary, but really, in order for us to be eligible for future One Bay Area grants, we have to implement this TOC policy. So I'll talk a little bit about the One Bay Area grant in a moment. What's in it for us? Well, that's if we qualify, if we go forward and we bring these updates to make our city compliant with MTC's TOC policy, we will qualify for future One Bay Area grant funding. And this resolution tonight is an opportunity for us to receive external grant funding to help support the implementation of goals, policies, and programs that are already identified in our general plan, our downtown and El Camino specific plan, and our station area specific plans, as well as with parking management, mobility hubs, station access. So this is a great opportunity for us to get some grant funding to do some planning work. Next slide. So the One Bay Area grant program, MTC's distributed over $941 million to Bay Area agencies all over. Of that amount, and they've done it for the past 3 cycles, we've received about a little over $2 million so far. The next funding cycle, MTC says, will be sometime in the latter part of 2026. And in order to be eligible for that funding, TOC consistency will be a factor. So it is in our interest to move forward with these planning projects. Next slide. Give you an idea of what we've received in the past from OBAG funds. They gave us about $500,000 for our general plan and specific plan update. 2022. It's also funded a number of street preservation and rehabilitation projects, street improvement projects around town. So certainly an important source of revenue for our transportation improvements. Next slide. The TOC policy will apply to the Millbrae station area. You can kind of see an overview of it in this area in green. That purple dotted line is the city limits with Burlingame. Burlingame, of course, would also have to comply with this as well. They also have a Caltrain station in their downtown. Next slide, just to zoom in to give you an idea, if you could jump to that. You can see the radius a little bit more closer. It roughly goes out to about the freeway. City Hall, you can see in the upper corner of your screen. To the west, it extends roughly to Palm Avenue at the outermost circumference of that radius. And again, this is a half mile from the station, so this is where the TOC policy is being applied. Next slide. The compliance requirements are a number of categories: density, affordable housing, parking management, and transit station access. In order to qualify, we would have to update our plans to identify minimum and maximum densities. We'd have to choose from a menu of policy options related to production, preservation, protection, and small business preservation. Parking management, the way we manage parking around the station area, and then also, of course, transit station access and circulation. You'd have to have a complete streets policy, prioritize active transportation plans. Next slide, please. So the good news is that we already meet many of these compliance requirements. We already have a certified housing element. That's one of the prerequisites. We already have an affordable housing requirement for 15% affordability in new development. We already have an active transportation plan that's adopted, and we have a complete streets policy. So those are examples of areas where we're already in compliance. And then next slide. And of course, there's other things where we're underway. We already have these projects in progress. We actually started these long before we knew about this program. We have a parking management program that we're working on in our downtown that'll come to you this winter. We have a number of programs in our certified housing element that we have to implement. We have local density and bonus incentives that's going to be coming forward to this council in January with another study session. Of course, one of our consent approvals this evening was the micro mobility hub project that's on the agenda earlier tonight. So by getting this resolution of support from council tonight, we would get assistance that would help us implement and support some of these ongoing programs. So we're hopeful that we can get grant funding. Next slide. And then the work program timeline for us, we'll be applying for that grant fund later this month. And we'll spend all of 2025 working on these TOC policy updates. We would be amending our downtown El Camino Real specific plan or stationary plan to whatever areas that we have to modify to bring that up to compliance. And then we would be, of course, bringing these back to council. All of this stuff would be reviewed by council on a case-by-case basis. And then hopefully we'll have that in place when the next round of OBAG funding is expected in the latter part of 2026. Next slide. So again, TOC compliance is required for us to remain eligible. The good news is this is a grant funding opportunity that we want to take advantage of. As I said, some requirements have been met, some are underway. And receipt of grant funds, if they're awarded by MTC, they do not incur obligations. They are just simply the funding to support the planning work to achieve that. And of course, the city council will have the ability to review the final outcome of any project that comes forward in the future, and we certainly will be here to talk about this more. But again, tonight's item, last slide, is just a resolution seeking local support so we can apply for that grant funding to take that first step.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mogensen. Councilmember Bobnwood.
So what specific requirements of MTC's TOC policy that poses the biggest challenge to Millbrae? If any.
That's a tough question.
Well, he's thinking I can help answer that.
Wow.
I think it's the minimum density, because right now we don't have a minimum density. And so if there's a minimum density that says, we have to comply and it's, 20 units an acre, but a 15 unit per acre project comes in, why would we not approve it, right? To hit the market and add to the supply of housing, which is the goal. So I think that is,
that's a good,
one of the issues. Floor area ratio, which we use. I mean, we're probably going to come back and recommend that we just eliminate floor area ratio in our multifamily and commercial, because it's really a suburban type tool for yards and backyards and setbacks. So those are probably two examples. Other than that, we, as Mr. Mogan said, we pretty much comply, with everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that brings up a good point. Mr. Mogens, if you can just bring back that half-mile map.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you, Eduardo. There it is.
Okay. So a good portion of that requirement goes into our single-family home neighborhood. So, and if there is a minimum density established, how is that going? I mean, it sounds relatively challenging for us to meet those requirements in the single R1 districts.
Yeah, it's my understanding that MTC has a provision that would not affect those single-family dwellings. They've already put that into the program. So we'll come back to you at a later date and talk a little bit more about it. But this would focus on the downtown El Camino specific plan, station area.
Yep, right, because not only is it, sort of the west side of El Camino, but it's also the east side of El Camino Real as well, as you can see.
Yeah.
Much of that area on the east side also is currently single family.
That's right. And they refer to them as anti-displacement provisions.
Okay.
So we'll talk more about that when we come back in the future.
Good. But, there's also a portion of that is near Magnolia and that is R2, and some of them are R3, and those potentially could become sort of an opportunity. And a little bit of that on perhaps even Hemlock, some of the area that is very close to the transit station. There might be some opportunity there. in terms of increasing, or be a little bit more flexible on the density on that.
Yeah. We're excited about this grant opportunity. Hopefully we can get some funding to explore all of this.
That's important.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Schneider.
Thank you. And can the slides get sent? They were great slides. I need to look at them a little bit longer. Using the little circle in the middle is that half-mile mark. Of course, I live on Palm Avenue, and I live right by Central Park. And lately, we have no parking, period, almost any time of the day or night. And a lot of that is because Richmond and the big complexes on Poplar and Palm, I think they've unbundled, at least one of them, I'm pretty sure they've unbundled parking, so now they're parking on Lansdale and things like that. And what I get complaints are, and I feel especially when it's young women who are working night shift and they get off work at 11 o'clock at night and cannot park anywhere near their apartment, and they're walking through the park, and that makes me very nervous. Is there a way we could move the circle a little bit that could include, I personally think that Richmond, Palm Poplar, the 500 blocks need to be under a transportation demand management plan. I know that's hard to do it retroactively to things that were built before that, but there is a problem with too many vehicles, and I've mentioned it to the city manager. Now we've got a lot of commercial trucks parking there. We've got a dump truck parking right in front of the park, taking up a literal dump truck. We've got 3 white vans that I think 2 of them people are living in, no windows, perfect shape, but I see them moving around Lansdale and Palm Avenue. And I bring this up, my second question was, all those OBAG funds that you said that we've received, I think are those that are kind of automatically given to cities as opposed to the competitive ones. So just something to keep in mind, because in my 9 years, I don't think we've ever gotten a competitive OBAG. I could be wrong, but I don't remember getting one because it comes through county BPAC. But if we could look at that area that is so heavily impacted by larger density and now with unbundled parking, it's really a problem on there. And would that help us qualify for grants or not? I'm looking at the climate change action and the fact that we tried to get a shuttle up to bring people from our east to our west and at least to the recreation center, and all of it could fit together if we had the right data in place. Am I making sense? I'm really tired.
I appreciate your comments.
Okay. I just, and again, we did get that one temporary speed block, but we still have our cars hit all the time because it's so transportation impacted there. Palm and Poplar and Ashton.
I got a question, Mr. Mogensen. Remember the piece of land that's within this half-mile radius that's owned by the SFO east of all the TOD development?
Yes, I'm familiar with the parcel.
Yeah. What's the current zoning on it?
It is, I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, what opportunity might exist with this new requirement and whether or not we can sort of mandate a certain amount of usage to that so that it could be more productive than just become a mound of dirt. Something to think about from a zoning perspective.
You're talking about the
Yes, I've
parcel
owned.
between the freeway,
Between the freeway and
Chevron gas station.
Right, correct.
Yeah,
I forgot the name of it.
We're really prohibited because of the FAA in terms of land uses there. So very limited, no assembly. It could be a parking lot. I mean, we're very limited. We can bring that back.
Yeah, we'll
or send an
certainly
email
look
to
into
the
that.
city council on the limitation of uses on that particular parcel.
I think that's something we need to take up.
Yeah.
At some point. Given 2.3 square mile, right? Every piece of real estate need to be very thoughtful.
Dog park. No, I mean, we are really limited, but I think, and perhaps council does as well, using that as a construction laydown site in our gateway and front entry to the city, we really need to improve that.
So there's that temporary use of it. But anyway, I think more thought needs to go into that because, just like what I said, 2.3 square mile, every piece of property need to be, in terms of land use, need to be very thoughtful and use it to the highest and best use possible. I don't think anybody really like to see a mound of dirt there. Anyone else? Councilmember Riley.
Hi, can you please back to the slide show the deadline, the application deadline? The one slide show application deadline. The one before. Yeah. Oh, so November 22, 4 p.m. is deadline.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay. I want to say thank you. I'm fully supported to you can get a grant from anywhere for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If that was a motion, I'd second the motion.
Would you like to make a motion, Councilmember Riley?
Yes.
Okay. You have a second from Vice Mayor Pappen?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Any other further comment? Any public comment? I don't have a speaker slip, and I only got one speaker or one attendee online. Make sure the hand raise button is working.
No speaker on this item, sir.
Okay, sounds good. Unless there's any further comment from any council member, last call. City Clerk, would you please?
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Riley?
Hi.
Councilmember Snyder?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pappen?
Yes.
Mayor Fung?
Aye.
Item number 10 passed by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you so very much. And that comes, here we go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we do have our MTC representative here. So council comment, who would like to begin? Any volunteers? Okay,
All right.
there we go.
City of Millbrae, from the people of Hanyu, we have a new addition to the really lovely cabinet. Congratulations. Thank you, Eduardo and staff. It looks lovely. I won't read it, but it might be really nice if we do a photo tonight to send back to Hanyu. I have other little treats, calendar, the lovely performance. I'm thinking maybe, because some of it was video, I'll send it to you in video. This I will probably give to Rotary. Rotary gave me one, and I gave them, and their Rotary gave me another back. But this is something for the cabinet now that we have it, or another cabinet, that our community groups might also share things. But that's, again, with our friendship and our sister city. I do want to say they actually have we visited a manufacturing plant. This is the blue dye that's very known in Japan. It's made out of indigo. So we went to a factory, and I think I haven't ironed it, but I'll probably be donating it if we want a display of our sister city there, our friendship city there. The event went really well. There's a few other things. They also gave us lots of food, and I'm giving that to you guys on there. We hope that the city will invite the mayor and the council members to the 20th anniversary of the Japanese Cultural Festival, which is this October. So we tried to do our groundwork in trying to heal the relationship and go from friendship city to sister city on that. Mayor Kawada is finishing his last term, which will be 20 years as mayor on that. So I'm sure there'll be a few more updates, but I've got some great video because they did a performance with the kids with all the little mascots. Well, the mascots are kid size, so they're about 5 feet tall, but the little person inside was probably about 3. It was really lovely. Other announcements then. City manager talked about the tree lighting. This is also the time of year where the Millbrae Community Foundation does its major fundraiser. And you can get information at Millbrae Community Foundation for the Holiday Star fundraiser. I think it's about $50. You get to put your name on it. You can take the star home. Again, reminding everybody to go, please, people of Millbrae, go to smcactive101.com. This is San Mateo Transportation Authority they identified 25 projects. There are 2 in Millbrae. Most of them are in San Mateo or South San Francisco. But if you want to see the Bay Trail and the Spur Trail get the funding, we need the people of Millbrae to go to smcactive101.com, fill out the survey, and press on the 2 Millbrae buttons on there. One is a combined project with San Bruno, and they both have to do with developing trails and getting grant money into the city. And then finally, I had my last City County Association of Government Bike Pedestrian Committee because I'm termed off. There are 6 openings for bike pedestrian for elected officials. Right now, there are no openings for people off the street. Sometimes elected members who've come off stay on because they get the public, but there's no seats. And I'm wondering, City Attorney, if we have our current council members who've just been elected or appointed, or the 2 that have been elected, could they apply? Because I think some of these seats are going to get filled at the November or definitely the December meetings on this. So can our not yet sworn in, but definitely elected, put their applications in? If they want
Can
to.
have staff look into that? I don't know the answer to that. off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I think that rule we need to go to
If we can
the
check.
organization and see what their rules are.
I can tell you after 9 years on BPAC that the one time we received a BPAC grant, we had a lot of people supporting Millbrae as the people, not the CCAG board, the grant, the scores. We're the people that score them. So it would be really important to get somebody from Millbrae as well as San Bruno on that committee.
But for clarification, are you talking about the 2 newly elected that will be sworn in on the 10th?
Yeah, it might be that CCAG won't deal with it until January, so there's
I don't
time.
think they do. I think they.
Okay, I was sworn in, or I was appointed in January of 2016. I'm just doing my point. There are 6 openings for elected officials, and there might be 7th depending on what happened in Redwood City. So that's it.
To that, but I believe the City Selections Committee has a bylaw and an application process and who they would accept as an applicant. We need to check that bylaw, but my inkling is that they need to be an elected official, which does not begin until the sworn-in happens anyway. We need to check on it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, to that point, I think the certification of the election isn't until
Right.
December 4th anyway.
December 4th to 5th, something like that. Anyhow. Vice Mayor?
Okay, tomorrow, I'm going to try to get this out, but just in case I don't. Tomorrow, there's a webinar put on by the Bay Area Toll Authority, which discusses an increase in the bridge tolls at the 7 state-owned toll bridges in our area. And it goes into great detail as to the upkeep and the reason why this is being necessitated. The upkeep is really, really high, and the ridership of crossing the bridges is lower these days. And the last thing we want is a bridge to fail or have to replace one of them. So again, there's a webinar tomorrow. It is on the MTC website. It's tomorrow between 6:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. And I believe it'll be open to questions if anybody has any there. Also, the county released a notice on something called Quick Map. It's quickmap.dot.ca.gov. It provides real-time traffic information, including road conditions, facility information, and resources for commercial vehicles, because there's all kinds of traffic improvement projects, like there'll be ones in Burlingame when they're dealing with the trees and everything like that. So I'll give this to the city clerk if she could include it in the minutes. It would be helpful there. Also, today's newspaper had a very interesting article on school safety and a program, and it's totally free. The website or the link is guys.guys.org, and it's really important. It's from one of the parents who lost a child in school violence, but the way it's described, it's a very positive, not fearful aspect. So I hope that our schools will take advantage of that. I'd also like to wish former Mayor Dan Quigg a happy birthday today. And 2 last items here. I know, having recently campaigned for some here, We are in dire need of dog parks. The amount of residents with dogs is enormous. So I hope and I would request that we formally look at Schultz Park, Meadows, and Green Hills Parks to add some aspect of a dog park. I know we had high hopes for the PUC property, and they basically are not being friendly or nice. But we can add on to what we have, and I can't tell you, I mean, if we registered the dog votes, we could really up the response here, but they are everywhere. So formally, if we could look into adding that to an agenda, that would be great. Also, we have discussed, and I just looking for confirmation, increasing our inclusionary housing from 15% to 20%. Is that coming up soon? Or affordability?
Mr. Mogensen, if I may, so the question is the timing for the local density housing bonus and then the inclusionary.
Oh, late. All right, well, hopefully we get there. Because I do believe it would be very beneficial in Millbrae. Unlike other cities, I do think the demand to build in Millbrae is really high. And I think it would not deter development, but really add to our affordability aspect. So I hope the future council will take that on. I believe so. So there we go. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all right. All right.
I just think it's important for the public's listening, so I always think it's important for the record.
Yeah, I mean, so just for the record, the local density bonus it's on the council goal, which we will, do that as quickly as possible. Thank you, Director Mogensen, about the study session that is January 26th, and we're going to bring back. And there'll be some studies, and then there'll be some statistics to show the public what's feasible, what's not feasible, and what's the best way to incentivize development so that we can finally bring about the changes that we all wanted to see in our downtown, specifically Broadway, El Camino Real, and so on and so forth, those areas.
And we work off of a fiscal year, so we've been working in it all year, so
right.
Mid-year, and you are correct, that was part of the adopted goals, and that will be brought back, as mentioned, here in January.
Right.
But we had no goals in
20. Okay, all right, good, thank you. So, thank you for the staff to put together this veteran event for the Veterans Day, which is extremely important to the community. Like, city manager says, rain or shine. It did rain, and it turns out to be the biggest crowd that I've ever seen. So I'm very thankful for the veterans who served this country, all 1.3 million active service member and all 16 million veterans who had served this country and keeping our country safe. Thank you so very much for all your sacrifices and that you're still making every day. The senior luncheon today at the Recreation Center for the Thanksgiving, which is great. Lots of senior turnout. Thank you, MCC, and also the Recreation Center and Director Hannah Moran, your staff, making all of this happen and put all the smile on our seniors' faces. That's important to them. Very thankful for our staff for putting it together and all the volunteers who joined us today. Councilmember Nguyen, Councilmember Cece Riley, Mr. Steve Rinaldi joining us and serving lunches to our seniors. They were just, it was an exceptional event. Thank you so much, everyone who participated. Some stuff on the TA, we're still working with BART and, with MTC to try to come up with different scenarios, different options, as they put it, to try to deal with the Regional Transportation Agency's fiscal cliff. We still want to make sure that San Francisco and Santa Clara counties can come to the table and, really help out, pay their fair share to make sure that these transportation agencies stay afloat. It's important that these public transit succeed, as we can continue to deal with ridership, try to boost up the ridership. Much of that still lags behind the pre-pandemic level. So we're hoping that we can get some agreement among different counties sooner rather than later so that we can keep these public transit accessible and keeping them safe for our ridership. So with that, that's the end of my update. Unless anyone else have anything else, otherwise I would adjourn the meeting at 10:45 p.m. tonight. Thank you all.
Mr. Mayor, if
Yes.
I may just.
Mr. City Manager?
Well, there's two notes in closing in memory of.
Yeah,
two
please.
people.
Which, if you don't mind, please.
So I think this is important. One of them, obviously, everybody's important and.
Okay, yeah, let me try that. All right, so thank you for the reminder. Closing in memory of Lynette, Gianni, and Ensign Joe. Lady Lion, Lynette McQuaid. Gianni was a San Bruno and San Mateo County resident for 32 years and entered into rest in San Francisco on October 16, 2024. Beloved wife of Millbrae Lion, Michael Gianni, together for 32 wonderful years. A native of San Francisco, age 71. Lynette was a registered nurse at San Francisco General for 31 years and a graduate of St. Paul's High School at the class of 1971, active with Mike in the Millbrae Lion. And then Ensign Joe was a valued member of our team as a recreational leader and facility attendant for many years. He took a break during the pandemic, but was one of the very first part-time employees to come back when the event opened again in Millbrae. He was constantly laughing and joking and made all of us smile. And when he wasn't at work, he was a husband and a dad, a very great father, driving with his kids back and forth from school and activities and planning the best family vacations. So he'll be sorely missed by all of us, and especially by his fellow facility attendants, as he was an important part of our team. And thank you so much for your service, Ensign. And we close today at 10:46 in memory of these two wonderful individuals. Thank you all.